Hello and welcome to the Overly Animated Podcast, where we take animation seriously. We talk a bunch of animated shows and movies here with new podcasts every other Wednesday. Find everything about us at overlyanimated.com. I'm your host, Dylan Heisen, and today I'm joined by Delaney Stovall.
Hey, y'all.
And Beatrice Murad.
Ahoy.
Yes, ahoy. I don't know if that's your judgment as to whether that's related to our topic today, which is shipping archetypes. Animation ship archetypes. We're going to talk everything about the few different archetypes for different relationships that we've seen throughout animation, whether it be in TV shows or movies. This is in honor of Valentine's Day, which is in a few days after this podcast comes out. We thought we'd have as if we needed an excuse to talk about shipping here.
Any excuse is a good excuse.
We've decided to take this angle, as you'll frequently hear a lot about. It's like enemies to lovers, childhood friends, those sorts of things. That's something that's talked a lot about, especially in recent years with a few more recent examples in animation. So we thought, and kudos to Beatrice for the initial idea on this. We thought we'd go over those archetypes, talk about different notable animation ships from within them, and some things, go over the archetype in general, what we think about it, and how it's been used recently in animation. So it should be exciting, like I mentioned before, overlyanimated.com if you haven't listened to this before. But other than that, shouldn't need a lot of preamble here. I don't think we're going to try to get into too many spoilers, but inevitably when talking about ships and culminating relationships, we might get into some vague, end spoilers for them. And some other things to talk about up front about the ships is that we're going to talk about canon ships, probably primarily, but fanon ships are fair game. Canon being something, and ship, it's a defined term, ship, a relationship. Canon being something that happened, which I guess is in the nautical pirate realm is canon. Canon being something that happens in the show or movie. I think that's on purpose. The person who made that term up. Fanon is something that was that does not happen in the show, but is something that fans ship. Is fan or fake? I guess it's fan, like a fan couple. This can either be relationships that culminated all the way to dating, or it could just be people having feelings for each other. And I also want to say this isn't all the archetypes for relationships. These are just the ones that stood out to us when we were looking through recent animation. These are ones that are frequently talked about, especially recently for animated shows. And also, we're not going to get into every single ship, just the ones that stood out to us. So I apologize if your favorite ship was not something we thought of, or something that wasn't as relevant as some of these others.
You can tell us in the comments.
Yes, I'm sure people will. If you missed this ship, yeah. No, please do. Frame it as like, I also thought of this for this category. That's productive discussion. And last thing is we're going to try to call these to couple. So for instance, one of the first ones we're going to talk about is best friends to couple. Frequently you'll hear that phrase as best friends to lovers. The word lovers has a lot of different meanings. And a lot of these relationships involve children. So I'd like to avoid that here, purposefully. And we're going to say to couple, even though it's not what it's really called. No shame if you use the more general archetypal term. I think that's just generally what it's called. But, we're gonna do to couple here. I always feel weird on the podcast talking about it when we have to use that phrasing. So we're gonna go differently here. Okay. Shipping archetypes. We're going to start off before we get into specific archetypes. Phrasing it like this is our first question. Coming into this discussion, do you have a favorite, relationship shipping archetype? And then we can see, how that plays out as we go over all of them. Delaney, do you have a favorite?
Oh, I absolutely do. I've known from a very young age what my favorite is, and it's definitely best friends to couple. I'm such a sucker for that. Always, when I when I was a little kid, and I was just yeah, that's what it's like. So good. That's what I'm about.
From a very young age.
Very young age.
You've been a shipper from childhood.
Here, if you want to hear a funny story, Dylan's heard the story 8 times. I vividly remember this being 9 or 10, whenever Avatar was about to end. And I'm literally, I had a TV in my bedroom, and I'm watching the finale. And I was hanging off the side of the end of my bed with my finger on the power button in case Zutara happened, because I had to stop watching immediately. Like, my first memory of shipping is definitely Kataang.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, we'll definitely talk about some.
I vividly remember
Avatar
this. Like,
ships.
I was gonna, like, was gonna lose my mind if people ship it. Like, it was over. Like,
yeah,
I was in that ship war. It was intense.
Yeah, I don't think ship war not like an archetype, but it's definitely a related topic for shipping here. So we're gonna try to talk about these in a non-warring fashion. Okay, I like that. Best friends to couple for Delaney. Beatrice, how about you? Do you have a favorite?
When I floated on a wooden plank.
Oh, no. Oh, my God.
And I stared at the clear sky. I heard a mermaid calling to me, telling me, "You have no favorite ship."
How long have you been sitting here writing?
Is this a poem?
What?
Is this an original?
Mayhaps.
Yeah, okay. The mermaid said you? Is that so? Are you the mermaid? Did the mermaid decide this for you?
That's a good question. Like,
listen, you can interpret this in many ways. That's the beauty of it. So there are many interpretations. But one thing is clear. I have no preference to any ship but my own ship.
What's your own ship?
It's called the SS.
So you're talking about a literal ship, not a relationship.
Yeah, I'm talking about literal ship.
It's so annoying.
I mean, I'm pretty sure you do have allegiances here, as we're going to go over some of your favorites.
I do have likes, but I mean, in term, I have preferences, but I also, if it's good enough, if the writing is strong enough, if it's done well enough, if the chemistry's there, I'll be pretty open-minded to any ship. Yeah,
I think that's a good sentiment. And all of these we're talking about here, if it's done well, I think we're going to be on board for it. So I definitely feel that way too. But if I were to have a bias, I would be similar to Delaney as the best friends to couple. I think those are the ones I have gotten the most into, the ones I've liked. Throughout my life. I mean, I think there's the two sides. There's the friends, the people generally well aligned, or do you like the people who are going at each other and then enemies and do you like the tension there? And a lot of people like the tension. I like happiness, happy people. So I'm definitely less on the enemies one. But as we'll go over, there's some prominent animation ships that might fall under enemies or rivals, and I'm definitely can be into those as well. So I do think if it's done well, or if it's just for whatever reason appealing, then I could be into any of these that we're going to talk about. Okay, so that's good here. So maybe we don't have any one on the panel hard aligned with the enemies to couple type of ones, but we'll do it justice, especially since there have been some notable ones recently in animation. Okay, so we're going to start here with our first archetype. This is not one that immediately stood out to us, I guess, when we were making it. We haven't mentioned it yet, but I would say this is the default. We could call this the classic, and we're going to call it boy meets girl. So it could be girl meets boy, could be girl meets girl, et cetera, et cetera. People who meet and then they either soon after start dating or have romantic feelings. I would say this is how our society primarily would expect people to couple up. Would be they meet in some sort of romantic context, or they meet and then decide that there are romantic feelings there. Like a traditional one. Beatrice, I know you also had this one listed. So is this what would you describe for this archetype?
Well, I think I actually just came up with a different name for it, which is more current, which is the swipe right couple, or the swipe right.
Yeah, I was thinking of dating apps too. Yeah, you meet someone on a dating app, that would fall under this one.
Exactly. It's you clearly see it's when their eyes meet, it's ooh, you're cute, whatever. I want to date you. It's just
different than a meet cute, or is that kind of what this is?
Right. So we have listed it here.
Can someone define meet cute for me first?
So a meet cute would be a trope where there's some grand event maybe where they have a cute initial meeting between them. They meet each other and there's some cute or notable way in which they meet, or one of the people has feelings for another one.
Because I don't see that as as like that to me, like childhood friends can have a meet cute. A like enemies to couple can have a meet cute. You know what I mean? The meet cute to me is like
meet
a
cute
moment.
on the battlefield against each other.
Exactly. You know, or it's like the first. If anything, for me, a meet cute is just like the first time they meet.
Yeah.
You know, or something.
Yeah, but this isn't the meet cute category. I would say when most people think of meet cutes, they would think of the boy meets girl though. Like I think there's some sort of connection between them, but I think you're right that it's not
common though. It's like that's usually like where you're like that is like usually it's the thing that starts it, right? So I agree with you there, but it could also happen in our other archetypes. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah, we'll see if we run into any meet cutes and outside of this archetype. I think that would be interesting to see. But yeah, meet cute is precipitates feelings, which if they're quick feelings upon meeting, that would be the boy meets girl here. Right. So we also want to say I think the next one we're going to talk about is best friends to couple, and there's a lot of overlap here. I was trying to draw a distinction with people are best friends, knew each other on a childhood friend setting, and then over time or later in life developed romantic feelings. This is people who are meeting and then soon after developing romantic feelings. So I think there is a clear difference there, but a lot of these ships might. It might be clear that it's not always so clear.
We're going to argue about it, so don't worry.
We have some of these ships listed for each ones. We've disputed marked there, so we're going to see if we agree or disagree under which they fall under. But okay, we're talking about boy meets girl, the classic.
Right.
So is this in terms of like how frequently is this used? I mean, this is like I think the default. So I'd say traditionally this is used a lot. But
you can see it coming from like a mile away, like you can watch, like this irritates me like all the time where I'm like, oh, here's the main guy, here's the main girl, and they just immediately set it up that they're gonna like each other and start dating.
Yeah.
Does that annoys you? That kind of setup?
Well, okay, I guess what annoys me, if it's
too predictable.
Well, I mean, it's the thing that irritates me about this is it's heteronormative, like in media when we see this a lot, it's the heteronormative default. Now, if it's gay, I'm on board. That's fine because it being gay is a subversion of what this is, because it's usually like that's what's so predictable. That's what we've been fed forever. Is guy meets girl and then or girl meets guy and then they have to date because that's what it always is. But now, granted, now we have some more we have more non-heteronormative ships and things are different. But this generally irritates me because it's just so traditionally heteronormative and it's kind of like the expectation.
Yeah.
And a lot of shows take advantage of it because it's hard for me to maybe think of an example, but sometimes a lot of shows, and this isn't just animation, this is live action too, which is a lot of what I'm talking about, is like this is just the default, and a lot of shows take advantage of that because they
subvert expectations.
Yeah, what I'm talking about is they they don't even have to try because this happens so often. The audience automatically just is like, yeah, they're going to get together, and the show doesn't even have to try that hard when they immediately push them together.
So you're coming kind of from the place. I'm assuming from the place of like, whereas say a girl meets girl couple, they'd have to it has to be much more overt than say
yes
for a boy meets girl couple in terms of establishing that this is what it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was definitely going to talk about the heteronormativity of this setup here. We're calling it boy meets girl as the traditionally heteronormative, but
that's why it's the classic. Yeah, this is what you usually see.
Right, but we are going to talk about queer ships in here too.
Yes.
So there are ones that fall under this.
Oh, definitely.
But like considering this is, I would say like the reason you might think of this as a heteronormative archetype is because, like I said, this is the societal default. Society is traditionally heteronormative, and so what we'd be like pushed to see through to see as romantic or as a classic romantic setup would be something that we would think of as a societal default here.
Right. Hearing this is really interesting to me because for me that's the same reason why for me like the best friends to couple one is kind of because I don't dislike any of the archetypes, but it's like to me like the bottom if I had to rank them as like the things I like simply because of the heteronormative first heteronormative reasons that society forces on us. So that's interesting that the boy meets girl one's the one that does it for you.
You know, and they're very similar too, because they kind of I think they play into it a lot like that. Like they're very similar in that way. I mean, and some of my favorite ships that we're going to talk about are, you know, would be considered like heteronormative, or, you know, like, and also we're talking about a lot of childhood favorites too. And, you know, and it's, you know, you're like, oh, of course you shipped it. Of course you liked it because like you had to, kind of. But also some of it, there are merits on their own.
Yeah, I mean, if most of the shows have the boy meets girl couple as the main ship, then that's like what's available to ship if you're shipping canon ships.
For sure.
Yeah, I would argue all of the archetypes we're talking about today are traditionally heteronormative. I would argue that.
Yes. For sure. I think that's for any archetype. Like, I think it's fair to say.
Like
just romance. I guess.
Yeah, just romance.
Traditionally heteronormative, as the way society tries to push it upon us. Yeah, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense. Like I tried to explain earlier, why this one would be associated with heteronormativity as the kind of default ship archetype. I would agree that best friends to couple would be another one that is pretty traditionally heteronormative, but I do think it's a lot of them. I think
maybe there might be one that, not that it's inherently queer, but there's another one that I'm not thinking about, that it's not hard to figure out which one I'm thinking about, is kind of could be considered not the queer default, but something that. And
I think enemies to couple has certainly been carved out in a queer space recently.
And then it's also interesting too, because, and not just recently, it's been a staple of fanon ships for a long time, and I think that also plays into a lot of queer coding in villains.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. This, I mean, we can talk about this now that we're on the topic of kind of heteronormativity here. But yeah, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense that if there's like a Disney princess and then the default male love interest, what queer fans are going to ship the princess with is like the female villain.
Right.
So that's like kind of how you end up with enemies to couple, maybe as a queer default, just because
it's like Rapunzel, right? That's a really big. That's really popular.
It's kind of the fan and ship option that's presented. Yeah.
I think, but it's also more, and another way to look at it as well is that, like, often when I'm thinking about this from like a female villain character perspective, because for me, when I was growing up, a lot of the female villains tended to be my favorite characters. And my brother one day like pointed this out to me, which was like pretty insightful comment, which is that a lot of times it's the female villain tends to have the more complicated character in comparison to at least growing up. Not so much the case as much anymore, but growing up, it still was there where like girls were either shown to be pretty simple, like the character wasn't super complex unless they were a villain. So a lot of times maybe that's why people would gravitate towards shipping the more interesting girl with the main girl than the more cupboard out prince. You know what I mean? So it's all, not just that. I think it's multiple layers is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think that applies to like some traditional Disney villains, certainly as well. I think that makes sense. Yeah, so it's interesting, but and we can circle back to this as we go through the ships. But in terms of boy meets girl, I mean, I would say in like overdone, underused. That's one of the questions we're going to be tackling. I think traditionally this is like super overdone.
Yes.
But I think recently, like there's I think people are making in animation like an exerted effort to not have a traditional kind of like boy meets girl type of relationship.
Also, if you make it gay, that automatically subverts.
And we also have some specific gay subversions that fall under this. So I don't think right now, I think this is overdone, boy meets girl. I think most shows have not done this. I think they've done some sort of interesting variation on a traditional romance.
I would say, I guess now I would agree. Like when you think of like animation 10 years ago, I would disagree.
I think as recently as 10 years ago, I think we're still doing some pretty traditional couples, but there's just so many variations that we'll go through. But that being said, there are some recent ones that we've put under this archetype as well.
Right. I'll just before we go into maybe specific couples, I did want to add though that I could see like the overdone argument, but I also like for me like when it's like a boy, maybe it's because I read a lot of romance, but maybe that's why. But for me, it's like sometimes the fun of this archetype is more like, it's not so much the whole like the cute meet. It's more like, okay, so how is this relationship going to develop? How are they going to get together? Like that is in and of itself a story. And if anyone's a fan of like shoujo anime, like it's like, are they arguably the same story? Yes. And are they arguably very different? Absolutely. So it's like, it's kind of like when you go in to watch a rom-com, or even like when you go in to watch like a superhero movie, you know that they're going to be okay in the end, but it's like, that doesn't make it like, I don't know, like to me, like overdone might suggest negative connotations, and maybe it's because I see the boy meets girl thing I'm seeing as like just a person meeting a person. I'm not taking in at the moment the heteronormative implications. I'm like, well, just like a typical love story isn't inherently like overdone or bad, is kind of just what I wanted to throw out there.
I think it's a good point. I think we are talking about a typical love story here, and not necessarily any specific thing. And yeah, I think
Beatrice
it's like
hasn't been hurt by Ladybug, that's really what I got.
That's also
out
true.
Of
that's that poisonous archetype for us. Yeah, I was gonna say, I do think this is like the most generic one, that like most broad archetype. I'll say that broad. Yeah. So I think like it's hard for something so broad to be overdone. But yeah, there is like a whole genre of anime that is just this over and over. So like and like romance novels and a lot of stuff. But
there's a lot of stuff.
It's just love stories. I think that's what it is. It's love stories.
Yeah, but there is a lot of like, which I don't think you can like. I mean, obviously, if you don't want to talk about it right now, that's fine. But like, you can't really untie this from heteronormativity. But you can. But there is also the thing you can. Every character is different. Like, there's different scenarios in which this occurs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would say this is ultimately one of my favorite archetypes, despite everything we've said, just because I do really like seeing the kind of traditional romantic meetings played out in different fashions. And I think recently there have been a lot of really interesting subversions of this, and I'm always a big fan of kind of subverting traditional expectations. And this is like the prime playing ground for whatever the expression is.
I'm here. When you take something that is traditionally heteronormative and you make it gay, it's the best thing ever. Like that's firmly my opinion.
So what are the subversions for you guys? Like what's something recent? Because you guys have mentioned that there have been recent subversions. So
so here, in a basic sense, it's like boy meets girl is the tradition. So anything that's not that, so whether it be girl meets girl, boy meets boy, or girl meets boy too, I think would be a subversion.
Yeah, girl
if it's
meets
like
boy,
a female presented version of this archetype, I think maybe she's taking the initiative in terms of this. I think all of that can be subversions. Obviously, there's a lot more specifics too in terms of where is this happening. Like what environment, maybe like the types of people involved.
Yeah.
I mean, how they develop romantic feelings. Mm-hmm. Like maybe that's like in a non-traditional fashion. I think there's a lot of interesting things. Let's go through these and see if we would say any of these are subversions on or traditional applications of the trope. And we're going to start with probably, not a traditional romance, but what I would call the ultimate boy meets girl in animation right now, which is Marinette and Adrian in Miraculous Ladybug. Ladybug has this whole love square, so it's not. I think that's the love square involving two people because of secret identities. So I think that is the subversion here.
Shiver me timbers, a love square.
Oh, I hate you! I hate you! Oh my god!
You remembered you're going back to that. Okay. But this, Marinette and Adrian are, in a lot of ways, a pretty traditional romance that's presented. This is kind of like a girl meets boy from Marinette's perspective. But this is a show kind of centered around this romance as Marinette does meet Adrian and soon after starts developing romantic feelings for him.
Obsessing over him, actually. Let's be clear.
Eventually obsessing upon him, and eventually, hopefully, curbing that obsession into healthier feelings. But regardless, I think we tried to ultimately define this as a boy meets girl.
Yes.
That checks out for you?
Yes, I did want to say that I think it is traditional in a lot of aspects, but I also understand that we do come from different backgrounds, and that I haven't watched a lot of anime, and by a lot I mean I have watched zero, but I understand that this would be more that a girl falling for a guy is happens a little bit more often in anime, and so in that way, I think this is also a change in like in my experience with Western animation, that you have a girl like pursuing a guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, Ladybug very anime influenced in certain ways. You're right. I think this is more common because there's just a lot more animes that are female oriented, like made for women. Yeah. But in terms of Western animation, I mean, you go back to the previous prominent French show of Code Lyoko, Jeremy and Aelita would be from the Jeremy's perspective. I think that's like a non-traditional boy meets girl as well. But yeah, I mean, a lot of Ladybug, it seems not very subversive now, but when Ladybug came out like 5-6 years ago or something, like, having the female main character, having this romance coming from her perspective in a Western cartoon. I do think these are pretty subversive elements to Ladybug.
I have a question, because couldn't you make the argument that, like, say when a princess, like a Disney, like when Ariel fell for Eric and the Little Mermaid, wouldn't that also be like from a female perspective? And it's a boy meets girl meets girl, and it's from her perspective. It's her experience, and she's going after him.
I think Disney princesses, like, I would say that's like an exception.
Disney also has its own like Disney falls into its own Disney trap.
Yeah, Disney doing the female main characters with the princesses is I don't think that was super in line with the rest of the industry, is what I would say.
All right, here's another example that's coming to me. All right, Helga from Hey Arnold. Like, she falls for Arnold, she goes after him.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I don't think
is Helga and Arnold a girl meets boy?
I don't know. I just don't see the I don't know.
Well, is that a rivals to couple? I don't know.
I'm just asking, like, because
there's certainly been ones in it. Yeah, it's just a lot more common recently.
Marinette is the main character. That's the big difference too. Is that this isn't like obviously, like, if you have you might have, it's not as common, but you could have a male main character and there's like a girl going after him. But this is different in that, like, or you always usually the main character guy is like really awkward, but he's like in love with this girl and he gets really nervous. But like, it's different in that it's a girl because she's the main character. Like that, I think that's the big, like, that's kind of where it's different. And then the thing with Disney, I agree with you. What you said is true. It's just hard with Disney because they do the same thing for 50 years. And like,
yeah, we don't think of like Disney princesses having female main characters as like subversive, but I guess it is in its own way. But also they've gotten better over time with their presentation of them, for sure.
They definitely, I would say, when Disney came out, that was a big deal. But then once you've had 50 of those movies, granted, it's not like I'd be like, oh, this Disney movie has a male main character. That would not get me hype. But like,
I just think, like, for instance, Totally Spies is another example that kind of comes to mind. So I'm just like, I don't know, like, I that's why I was just like, I don't know if it's
Totally Spies,
revolutionary
another
as we were
French
discussing
cartoon.
it. Was the only thing.
Yeah, not I mean, not like super revolutionary, but if something we take for granted now. I think seeing
well, just in that
girl meets boys. But bringing up the Helga and Arnold, and during the Marinette and Adrian discussion makes me want to make a whole subcategory of female characters with an unhealthy relationship towards the boy, which I think is its own trope, is like kind of a sexist trope of the way we write women having feelings as through obsession towards men. I think that's totally another archetype too that those two would fall under. But okay, so how about another one? Lumity. This is a tough one. So, Luz and Amity in the Owl House. I've argued this is ultimately going to be a girl meets girl here. Also an element of rivals to couples, certainly, as they are, Amity's presented as like the mean girl to start with. You could argue this is maybe a best friends to couple as they're friends now and not together yet. Again, there's a lot of overlap there. I mean, Delaney, what are your thoughts on Lumity in this category?
So I disagree heavily that this belongs in this category. Heavily. Yep. So for me, I think what I ultimately think is going to happen with Lumity, regardless of any future drama that might occur, which could, change up the like flipping, but I think this is going to end up being like Catradora, except instead of best friends to enemies, it's going to be rivals to best friends to couple. and because that's where rivals is what I mean, rivals. And so like
you think this should be rivals?
Yeah, this should be rivals to couple, like hardcore, like I understand where you're coming from. And like, it's not that you're wrong; it's just that you're wrong. But no, like,
yeah. Look, I've had to make this argument a few times on the podcast. I'll give the short version again. I do think Lumity has a rivals to couple aesthetic to it. I think like it's totally valid to put in there. It has a flavor of rivals to couple, but I don't think Luz and Amity are actually rivals except for like 1.5 episodes. So that makes me feel like it should be more of a traditional one. That would be the argument.
And I think it's more like there's like. I mean, I would say for most of like half of the first season, they're rivals.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because Amity's not in every episode, but yeah, you could say, 7 is probably the turning point for them becoming friends, but they are still presented at the end of the episode as like a humph type of thing, like as more of a rivals thing. I think it's valid to start it as rivals here. I don't think this would be like a traditional rivals to couple, considering they become not rivals so quickly, which I think is something we commented about Lumity. I'm fine with either one. I think it's a mix of both, and like I said, a best friends mixed in as well. Point is, it doesn't really fit super well into any of the categories.
And I'm ready for Beatrice to agree with me.
I'm ready. I'm ready to agree with everything, but one thing: I don't think they'd fall under the best friends to couple category.
Well, I think I will say what I meant was that they will.
But that's what I mean. I don't think they will.
Oh, okay, interesting.
I think that Willow is.
I mean, we're like predicting
going to be
future.
Luce's best friend. I think that a best friend can coexist with a couple. Like you don't have to lose your friends in order. Like your like your partner doesn't have to take place of your best friend. In these instances, so that's why like I personally wouldn't. I don't want Amity to be Luce's best friend.
Well, I think you can have more than one best friend. Like, to me, Amity, like, Luz
the
is
age-old question,
friend.
can you have more than one
Can you have more than one best friend?
Yeah,
sure. But,
so this is, like, I guess, like, I agree with you, but I would say, like, Luz is Amity's best friend, because Amity, and then, like, Amity and Willow will, like, reconcile more.
So sad for Amity.
Right? Isn't that sad?
That's
and
sad.
then, like, but then also, I think Luz like can be best friends with Willow and be best friends with Amity. And of course, this is also, personal experience too. Like I have best friends, like I have a best friend. And then I also consider my wife, we're best friends. And we kind of have a throuple situation going on with my best friend. And then they decided they're even better best friends than I am. And I was like, I hate y'all.
The best friends, being like best friends with your partner, I think that's a whole, I guess that we're doing the archetypes by what it starts out as and not what, I think a lot of these would be kind of be best friends now that they're together.
You make another good point. Like what makes an archetype? Like, is it like,
we're kind of doing from how it starts out, but we're going to get into some that classify the relationship instead of how it starts out. So I think we're kind of going to talk about both, but the ones to start with here, we're going to all be how it starts out. But it's not necessarily either or. Archetype is just like a grouping of of couples,
and the couples can be more than one thing.
Yeah, definitely. And
of course, a lot of shipping too, and a lot of these ships that we're talking about, they only get together at the end. So that's really what they have to be anyway for shipping archetypes.
Yeah,
that is true, because a frequent discussion point is how most animation couples take until the end of the show to get together. So for most of the show, what we're actually seeing is the getting together part, not the interrelationship part. So that would apply to most of these couples here. Lumity is hopefully an exception, as they have been going pretty quickly. So to conclude with Lumity, it's like they maybe a rivals to friends instead of best friends to, although, we don't really know to be determined. Rivals to friends to couple, and it all happens in a short span of time, so you could classify it as a boy meets girl, considering it's all short. So I think that's maybe a good summary of it. But yeah, not a traditional one. Here's another potentially non-traditional one. A classic we have to talk about is Kataang, Katara and Aang in Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Right.
They have a meet cute in the first episode with the iceberg. As we've said, that may or may not imply this category. They don't get together until the end of the show, so there's a long time. So we've said, is this best friends to couple? Is this a traditional one? I think the argument for a boy meets girl would be that they have a traditional boy meets girl beginning. They kind of have a traditional boy meets girl structure, and the show doesn't take place in too long of a span of time, and they do get together by the end. Best friends argument would be that for most of the show, they are best friends instead of in a relationship, and then they ultimately go from being best friends to being together. Although that entire time, Aang has a crush on Katara.
Right.
Yes.
I have a question. Does with best friends to couple, should a qualification for it be also like? Well, no, never mind. Ignore my question.
Well, you're going to say where I was thinking you were going to go is like, are they friends without having any feelings involved, like while they're being?
Well,
friends?
I guess, but it was more. I was going to go with like, should there be like a moment where they have to weigh the option of like, should I take the risk and risk losing my best friend?
Yeah, which happens with Kataang.
You know,
yeah.
So that
maybe not in that sense, but
again, I haven't also seen Avatar in a very long time. So you saying that it happened surprised me because I didn't know
what I'm thinking of with that is the whole there's the war in the Ember Island players. The war is going on right now. Type of So and I guess maybe Aang goes through that before the invasion. I don't know.
He does. That's definitely.
He's probably talking to himself about
that.
That
does happen.
That
does happen before the invasion.
Delaney, what do you think as OG Kataang shippers? Do you feel good about this as a boy meets girl?
So no, like I agree. Like they do have the meet cute. Like this does have all the makings. For me, what changes it a lot is yes, like Aang has a crush on Katara, like literally the whole time. But then like. When we talk about like seasons and like over a shorter period of time, we're also talking about a different show than like a lot of the other shows we're currently talking about. Like Avatar's 60 episodes.
Yeah, it's a long show.
So when Aang, like that's for me is like for them to get like for me the whole like classic is like it's kind of a little like okay they meet and they have really strong feelings for each other and it doesn't necessarily have to happen over a long time, but like. They're not generally best friends. Like Katara and Aang are best friends, and like there's just this really long gap between, and even Aang being overly like, basically you get to like it's really just season 1 where Aang's like, oh my god, I'm in love with Katara.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, it goes through phases,
and then we like bring it all back in season 3, which is like fine, but like that's to me that's what makes this best friends.
Yeah, I can see it. I think you could argue from Aang's perspective, it's boy meets girl. From Katara's perspective, it's best friends to couple.
Yeah,
But I think, like you said, there's a period where they're just friends and there's not heavy feelings at play.
Also, Aang literally just woke up out of the iceberg, and it was like literally the
Yeah, and you could argue this as it's not such a crush as much as here's a person who's who I'm into.
I mean, Katara is cute, and like no one's gonna say Katara is not cute, but like he had literally just woke up. Like, I mean, fresh from that.
That's another factor too. Ultimately, I think probably at least a mixture of the two. Not one that easily fits in, but you know, certainly
the
a classic.
Season plays it really hard. So like, I see, like, I get it.
Yeah, I think in the first season, it's a pretty classic boy meets girl, and then the show either doesn't focus on it or does some different things with it. Looking back, we think of this as like a pretty traditional classic ship, but not necessarily one as we're talking about that.
Well, it's kind of like the blueprint
for a lot of modern ships, in its own way.
And for me, like this was my like first time shipping, knowing what shipping was. Like I would get on the Nickelodeon forums and get mad at people, like.
I'll give my own Nickelodeon forum story, but a little bit predating Kataang. But this is an early defining one for a lot of us. So there you go. It's Kataang. Let's go to the much more recent one. As we're starting to talk about subverting them. Troy and Benson from Kipo and the Age of Wonder Beasts. We have I think like a pretty quote unquote traditional boy meets boy here.
Yes.
With Troy and Benson.
As traditional as boy meets boy can be. Considering
right, I mean, I think the thing with Troy and Benson is like we're gonna do a boy meets girl, except it's boy meets boy. It's like the subversion is that it's two boys.
They're so cute, and like they do the anime like hard eyes, like you get the slow mo music,
sparkly vision.
It's so good. Like it's so good.
Yeah, there's a lag before they get together, where they are friends. So probably an element of friends as well going on here. As we said, there's a lot of overlap here, but love Troy and Benson as a pretty defining animation boy meets boy.
Yeah, I would say like they're the blueprint now for boy meets boy.
Yeah, there have been others. I would say. I mean, there have been other attempts. This is really the first one in Western animation for kids that is able to go at it completely uninhibited in their presentation of it, and it's canon, and it happens completely explicitly on screen the whole time. So, pretty wonderful. And
we even get to see them actually like date, which is like a big deal.
Yes, towards the end, I guess. Yeah, and then there's ending stuff. Yeah, and then the last episode too, without spoiling. But yeah, love Troy and Benson. Let's do you and Touko next from Bloomin' to You. This is when Beatrice put on that line early as yeah, and
Beatrice has awoken.
No, I was literally looking up Troy and Benson images because I was like, I haven't seen Kipo. I think I've only seen the giant bunnies. So yes, yeah. I was looking. So I probably spoiled myself something. I'm pretty sure I spoiled myself something. But
yeah,
they're
probably,
really
but it's absolutely fine. Good. Yeah, it's fine though.
They're really cute.
Yeah. Anyway, so Beatrice, you marked you and Touko, I think, originally as like a classic, or and then we kind of like turned this into this whole primary archetype. But yeah, are they? I mean, this is a pretty non-traditional romance for the anime, but also maybe a girl meets girl in its own ways.
It's interesting because it's kind of
gay. I looked it up.
Yeah, no, but it's all you say it's non-traditional. I mean, if we take it as like the heteronormative boy meets girl, if we're just strictly talking about heteronormative boy meets girl, then yes, it is like subversive and non-traditional. But within the genre of like yuri romance shoujo, it does do some subversion, but it also does deal with a lot of tropes from within that genre. So it's traditional. I mean, it basically just depends on the lens you're looking at through of how non-traditional it is.
Yeah, I think from Toku's perspective, this is a clear girl meets girl.
100%.
From Yu's perspective, it's weird because she's trying to like convince herself wondering whether she has feelings the whole series.
Right. I mean, if you just look at it as like, it's like, this is where it kind of is complicated because like reading it, like when you're reading it, they're going to end up together in the end. So it's one of those, like, this is a love story. It's like from the beginning, like when you go to look for the book, when you're like at a bookstore in a world where everything's normal and you're like, ooh, this, and you go to the specific shelf that has the Yuri romance novels, whatever, and you pick it out, that they're going to end up together in the end. Like rarely do people ever not end up together. Like that would have been a bigger subversion than it just being two girls, if that makes any sense, is them not getting together in the end.
Yeah. The anime has not thus far gotten to that point yet.
Right. Sorry. But yeah. So anyway, that tells you that you should read the manga.
Yeah. I don't know are we getting a second season confirmed? I don't remember.
I don't. So just read the manga. It's really good. But yeah. So it's interesting. It's just they have like I think it's a cute meet. It's not a cute meet in that it's just an awkward meet, I guess is a good way to describe how they meet the first time. And yeah, it depending on the perspective, it changes. I think with a lot of things, depending on whose perspective of it is, it can change. But I do see them as like this is a girl meets girl story, simply because they do meet, and in the end, they do end up getting together. So it's like sure. I don't know. It's like, yeah, maybe in the beginning she doesn't realize she has feelings, but like one of them does realize she has feelings. And so it's like, and it is on their relationship. So.
Yeah, I think it's a great call. I think that other than it being two girls, the non-traditional aspect is that the show is largely about you kind of grappling with romantic feelings and like to the extent that applies to her. So I think that's kind of this show's kind of spin on it. But yeah, Bloomin' 2 probably, I would say, still the preeminent female romance anime that we've gotten.
Recently, yeah.
In
terms of explicitness,
anime exists.
There's Dylan, you're not as well versed as me in this genre.
Well, I mean, there's like old stuff that's not as.
It's been pretty Like, you can't say that Utena's thing isn't explicit. You can't say
it depends
that,
on
like,
your definition of
Sailor Moon
explicit,
stuff
yeah.
is pretty explicit, too.
Yeah.
Like, there's...
We don't, depends on explicit. Yeah, Delaney, yes, Yuri, there's whole Yuri genre, but most of it, in terms of anime, until recently, has not actually ended up playing up on screen to a large
Strawberry
extent.
Panic was very explicit. So what I mean is...
Yeah, Strawberry Panic, yeah. I've seen that. But it's its own kind of weird sub thing. It's hard to get into.
It's hard to categorize, yeah. It's its own thing.
Delaney, I think if you're going to watch two animes, Blooming would be one of them. And then the second would probably be the Little Witch Academia, which we'll talk about later. Yeah.
Yeah, everyone, I know, I need to watch that one.
Yeah, Blooming 2, among our community, generally the favorite kind of queer anime, at least in terms of girls that we've gotten. Staying with anime, so I was tracking all of the Ghibli romances, the Studio Ghibli romances, considering we went through all the movies last year. And I found that almost all of them fit into Boy Meets Girl. So I think that's not super unexpected. A lot of them have weird twists to them. Definitely the most preeminent Ghibli romance, at least for me, is Shizuku and Seiji from Whisper of the Heart. The Ghibli's most romance centric, along with Poppy Hill, but anime. And one of my all time favorite couples, Shizuku and Seiji, pretty traditional Boy Meets Girl. Their meet cute being, I guess, Seiji trying to get Shizuku to notice him by like checking out all the books that she reads, and their romance kind of quickly developing.
That sounds adorable. Why haven't I watched this one?
Yeah, you gotta watch this one. It's my all-time favorite. Whisper of the Heart. Other Ghibli ones, that I felt fell under this. Kiki and Tombo, maybe from Kiki's Delivery Service.
I definitely think Kiki Tombo. Like, that's...
Yeah, except Kiki doesn't really care about him, but that's okay.
That's correct.
Howl and Sophie, Howl's Moving Castle. That's a weird...
Howl and Sophie.
one of the only explicit ones. Pazu and Shita, Castle in the Sky, Falling from the Sky. That's a good meet cute. Arin and Teru from Tales from Earthsea. Ponyo, Sosuke, Ponyo.
Sosuke, best boy.
On Marnie from When Marnie Was There, plus that weird twist stuff that's going on, but probably a pretty Girl Meets Girl. Umi and Shun from Up on Poppy Hill. Yeah, Poppy Hill also has its weird stuff going on, but a pretty traditional meet cute jumping into the pool from the building. Yeah. So a lot of Ghibli's falling into this category, each typically having their own twist to them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there you go. Okay, those are the ones we wanted to go over. A lot for this one, just weed the most for this one. But Delaney, any others you want to mention, or what stands out to you from the ones we talked about?
Oh, definitely. Because I disagree with Kataang. It's definitely like it's like Marinette and Adrian and Lumity. Like, but again, I also don't think Lumity's going to be this.
You also disagreed with that one.
I also disagree with that one. I mean, the big ones are like Kataang and Marinette and Adrian. Like. But I don't agree with it anyway. It's Marinette and Adrian. That's it.
Okay.
That's what we're going to go with.
Beatrice, any others or your favorites here?
No, I think we discussed a bunch.
Nice. Yeah, I also wanted to mention Wally and Artemis from Young Justice.
Oh yeah, they're
Spitfire.
Great. They're great.
That's a classic animation romance that is got even more into in the recent season 3.
Well, what about Grant? I only watched like the first 2 seasons, and it kind of like gets weird after that. But
of Young Justice.
Yeah,
that was Superboy and
that's
Miss Martian?
2/3 of them. Yeah, Superboy.
Yeah, Superboy and
I guess they're this one too. I don't remember.
Yeah.
I didn't honestly. I didn't. I need to rewatch the first 2 seasons of Young Justice. I looked up Spitfire's origins, and I do think it falls under this one. I would have to look up the other one too. That's another very prominent couple as well, for sure.
Is it McGann?
McGann, yeah.
Yeah,
McGann. Yeah, and yeah, I do think Ladybug stands out here, but I think Kataang.
And then of course Troy and Benson are like Boy Meets Boy. Like they're like probably the most cookie cutter on this list, and I love it.
That stands out to me as like the most clear queer subversion of the traditional meeting that we've gotten recently. Yeah, and for me, Shizuku and Seiji are like one of the iconic all-time ships. Okay, let's talk about best friends to couple here as our next archetype.
The best one. Let's go.
The best one. Okay, we had 2 favorites, 1 least favorite potentially, but we've also have a lot under this one. And after this one, we're going to talk about childhood friends to couple, and we wanted to note that there is oftentimes an overlap between these 2 categories. As if you're childhood friends, you're probably best friends.
Yes.
but not necessarily not all of these best friends would be childhood friends. Also, both of these are just friends to couple. They're like subsets of friends to couple, so flavors of that. But this is one you hear about a lot, is like best friends and childhood friends. Like that, so that's kind of why archetypes may be defined by how we view them, how many people frequently view that. And I think this is one that's viewed as a traditional archetype. So let's talk about best friends to couple here, and we've already talked a lot about it, and as it's some of our Delaney and I is one of our favorite ones. Potentially one of the more overdone ones, if you want to say it in a negative sense, in the sense that we've several here to talk about that might fall under best friends to couple. I think just because our headliner for best friends is going to be Starco, Star and Marco from Star vs. Force of Evil, I think a lot of people have best friends to couple fatigue because of that relationship, but I don't think it was necessarily thought of in that. I think it's just because we'd seen one of the most prominent ones like very recently.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Other than that, I don't think it's like super overused, I guess. I think it feels pretty in line with the other ones. But I also feel like this is if you're writing a kid's story, this is just going to be one of the ones you're going to use more.
Yeah.
They're, more, as we're talking about animation, unfortunately, we're talking about a lot of kids' stories. Not that it's a bad thing, but just because there isn't more general.
And if you want to not do meet cute and, doing boy meets girl or whatever, this is kind of the one that you're going to do it usually if it's kids.
So it's like the most basic of subversions of a traditional romance, probably.
Yeah.
It's like, they're actually going to be best friends for a while, and then they're going to get together instead of kind of quickly.
And it's also really appealing because you also have that will they or they won't they.
Right.
Ooh, yeah, how about that? The will they, won't they.
Won't they.
This is probably the most will they, won't they archetype, isn't it?
Definitely. Well, you're like, I don't want to mess up our friendship. And then of course, okay, we already mentioned Starco. Like Starco also is like a whole roller coaster ride. So like you do it all with Starco. Like they date other people, and then you have the whole they like each other at different times, and it's a whole thing.
And most of these ships we're going to talk about have one element of either one character likes the other or the opposite. But with Starco, you get both back and forth, and they're also seeing other people. And so that could be like most of them would have like maybe one element of any of that. I like that. I like the will they, won't they, just because they're friends and they know each other, but they're not dating yet. So will they get to date? You could also, I think you probably could have will they, won't they's in the other archetypes as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Maybe
that's like a meet cute. It's just an element that you can have.
Yeah, it's like an element rather than an archetype. But maybe like meet cute, we would traditionally apply to boy meets girl. Will they, won't they would traditionally apply to a best friends to couple type situation. But I think will they, won't they's in terms of like sitcoms would probably be most applied to boy meets girl. Yes. It's just like there's like a short period of will they, won't they after having a meet cute, and then they get together. Yeah. And in terms of sitcoms, they maybe drag out that period.
Yeah, you watch a sitcom and it takes 6 seasons.
Yeah, to the extent that maybe they become best friends during that period. So maybe they would then get into this territory. And like we said, there's a lot of overlap between this category and the previous ones. Delaney, anything else about this category before we get into the ships?
I mean, I'm just absolutely a sucker for this. Like, it just feeds my soul.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll go through the ones that have fed your soul, Beatrice.
I'll just I'll say my whole thing on, because I mentioned it before about the whole heteronormativity of things. Well, the reason this one for me if I find this one to be the most boring, it's simply because, and usually I find it boring is within the heteronormative context where it's like a girl and a guy. Because a lot of times it's like, you hear like, oh, girls and boys can't be friends. They can't be platonic because this and the whatever, you know what I mean? So that's why whenever it's best friends to couple and it's a heteronormative thing, I always kind of cringe. Maybe it's because I think it's overdone slightly when it is within a heteronormative context, because
everything heteronormative is so boring. I don't you're correct.
I know, it's just more me. I just wish I also like having I would like having an emphasis on like also having platonic friendships being just as meaningful and important for when it's a girl and a guy, because for some reason when it's like 2 girls or 2 guys, they're allowed to be super platonic but super super dedicated to each other, and friendship, the power of brotherhood or the power of sisterhood and whatever, and they can go to the ends of the world for each other and still be friends. But when it's a girl and a guy, No, they have to be in love. It can't be just because of platonic feelings of friendship. And that we can get into the whole like homophobia within that. We can get into all like the layers of that, and that we can break down in a completely separate podcast dedicated to it. But that's why for me this is the one that like I guess I have the most mixed feelings over. This category.
I think you brought up an element that a lot of people you'll hear frequently when applied to best friends couple, which is, oh, why can't they just be friends? Like,
Right.
why aren't there more platonic male, female, or just platonic people in general presented? So I think people who are eager to see, more platonic relationships presented, might be frustrated by this archetype when it's applied because maybe their favorite platonic two characters end up dating and they think that's overdone. Yeah, I do think a lot of people probably would think this is overdone. So I think that's fair. I think probably these two categories would be the ones you'll probably hear the most about being overdone.
I also think like the feelings are all, like, because a lot of times like people will also say that when like the ship that they ship isn't happening, they're like, well, why can't this ship just be friends?
I think
or
so.
They'll also, and then some people are literally just coming, like for me, I'm coming to this because of like I see the double standard in that, like, you know, what that I mentioned before, between like a straight friendship versus or at least a heteronormative friendship versus not. So that's why it's a bit more like it can people. There's layers. It's complicated.
Yeah, I think it's all complicated. Depends on your perspective. Depends on the ship. Let's go through some of the ships and see what applies. So we talked about Starco, Star and Marco from Star vs. Force of Evil. They not childhood friends. They meet when Star comes to his dimension. Then they become quickly best friends in the first season. Then we talked about, they go through different phases of liking each other, of dating other people. Yeah, I didn't think of it in those terms, but it does. One of them likes each other, then the other one's dating someone, then reverses that, and they get together right before the finale. When I think best friends to couple, I'm thinking Starco right now in terms of animation and in general. I think this would probably be the one that stands out to me most from any medium. Starco, one of my all-time favorites. I know a lot of people end up frustrating with the will they, won't they aspect of Starco. I think looking back, for me at least, looking back, it feels a lot better once you're not in the moment of going through the will they, won't they. It's just like, oh, that was a fun ride. But I think people
I watched Bones. Nothing can be as long as that, so this was fine.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, there have been longer ones, guys. So
way longer.
This is only 4 seasons.
Also, I watched Ladybug.
We're also seeing a longer will they, won't they with. I mean, yeah, I don't know if Ladybug is a traditional will they, won't they, but yeah. So we have Starco. How about Korrasami as a best friends to couple?
The best one ever. It's
not what I originally. So I'm like, okay, where does Korrasami fit? And I think you could say it's similar to Lumity in terms of the fact that it has maybe a rivals to couple flavor to it, because in season 1, Sami is like a rival / enemy kind of for like a little bit.
Except it's like one-sided.
Yeah, I think so. And also the thing with Korrasami is we've seen it play out, and we've seen the fact that was only the first season, and the fact that was not super significant. And so then they become
friends. And then
book
3 is super best friend adventures. Like
yeah. But then they become best friends in book 3. Then in book 4, they're carrying out their best friends till they like start to culminate with a romantic relationship right at the end.
God, so
good. I don't see Korrasami like. I don't know if like they needed to be best friends in order to become a couple, if that makes sense. Like they needed to
because of from where they started or where the characters are at.
No, where the characters are at. Just because of what happened to Korra in book 3 and all that. Yeah. Like she needed someone like for her, like for where she was at the end of book 3, like the person that she needed to end up with was the person she trusted the most. Like she needed her best friend. It needed to be her best friend. If I'm making any sense.
I think so, yeah.
Whereas say with like Kataang, like if Aang just continued, if I could see a version of Avatar where like Aang still would Aang doesn't forget about the crush in season 2, if that makes in book 2. And it could still work out, and I could but just because of where Korra's at,
based on her,
it needed to be. She needed to be friends with her first. There needed to be this level of trust to be gained before she opened herself up in that way.
Well, also because of how much of an absolute disaster dating Mako was.
Exactly. So it's like I feel like that she matured from that experience, and I feel like the next relationship that she had, she needed it to come from a place of very deep trust. And I don't think someone who isn't a best friend would have been able to reach that level.
Yeah, I think so for all of that. So yeah, I do think ultimately Korra and Asami, and especially in the second half of the show, as a best friends to couple, in a really one where we all really love. And I don't know, for me, I just didn't initially think of it quite in terms of this. So, but once you think of it, I feel like it's clear, like that. Maybe not as like traditional of one as Starco, but one that to me ends up being like one of the more prominent best friends to couple ones looking back.
That's the thing for me when you're talking about like what you think of. For me, it's Korrasami, like because of season 3, like you kind of watch, like it's interesting how they do it, because I really think they do a really good job in book 3 of showing like how far they've come and how like and being best friends, like because it's really a different experience from watching season 1, like Korra and Asami, to book 3 versus like, I don't know. It's just, I mean, they're different, but like, and granted, Star Wars Force People has like a lot more episodes than Korra does, so that's something there too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when I think of Korrasami and best friends, I think of Asami writing Korra all these letters when she's recovering. That's like a best friend move. It's like, I got the most letters to Asami. Well, she's the one I responded to, right? Like that. Yeah. You see the fruits of their best friends.
It's also because they're big gay, like.
Well, yeah, that would be the couple part. Yeah, that would be
so
the romantic feelings part. Yeah. Okay. Next we have two other ones that may or may not fall into this category. Steven and Connie from Steven Universe. I think could be seen as a boy meets girl, as Steven likes Connie in season 1, a long time ago. When they meet,
that's the thing. Like with the same thing with like if Guitar and Aang aren't meet cute because of how long it takes, Steven and Connie def aren't, because it takes way longer.
Yeah, I mean, so I think ultimately probably why I classify Kataang as a traditional, because it's a shorter time period versus Steven Universe. I think both in terms of in-universe time and in terms of episodes. Steven and Connie, probably season 1, boy meets girlish. Steven has feelings for Connie, but then they have a friendship that develops over the course of a long period of time before they end up getting together.
Like, I don't know, like, are they together at the very, very end? Because like what I'm thinking of is Steven Universe Future. So
yeah, at the end of Future, yeah, and that's true. There's a time.
Because that's for me, that's what makes this like. There's no way this could be boy meets girl. Like, obviously Steven has a crush on her.
That's true. I didn't even consider there's a time jump between Steven Universe and SUF.
That's my thing. They're not together at the end of Steven Universe.
No,
they're
you're right. Yeah.
So yeah.
If there's a time jump and you get together only after the time jump, then you're not. Then it's a best friend situation. Okay, but that's what we've determined.
That boy meets girl, like in both of our examples, like with Kataang and now Steven and Connie, because they both are like, this is the first girl I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's the similarity. No, honestly, I mean, one was trapped in an iceberg and the other was just sheltered by weird aliens.
Like he saw women, but they were like. They're space rocks.
I live in a town of 10 people and none of them are this age. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there's Steven. I think Steven and Connie are probably going to go down as one of the. I mean, it's not as central to the show as Kataang.
Well, I think they're really like a really strong contender for like I get Beatrice, like I get it, like, you know, when it's really heteronormative and it's like they can just be friends. But I think like with Steven and Connie, like,
listen, Steven Universe is its own category because you're fine. They're not the ones that bother me.
They're such good best friends. Like that's the thing. They're such good best friends. And then like, oh, they're so cute. Like it's just the best.
Yeah. Love Steven and Connie. Last major one to talk about. I put this under best friends to couple. Bumbleby, but Yang and Blake from Ruby. But
like you yell at you.
Definitely, I think not going to be one that falls under a clear category, but I'd love to hear what Beatrice has to say about where Bumbleby should fall.
I mean, I don't remember disputing this.
Oh, you put a whole thing on the outline. And
did I?
Maybe you should just wipe this from your mind.
Maybe I confused Bumbleby with Bubbline.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
That
We'll talk
was-
about
Oh,
Bubbline
that's-
later.
That was the one that I was.
Well,
really
let me talk about why Bumblebee might not fall under one category. So they meet, and probably initially they're partnered together. So that's like Ruby ships where there's like a partnering system at the school
that
they
was the
go
whole
to.
thing.
That's like a clear best friends thing if they're partnered together. But they're not like initially the closest of friends, and there's like a tension. I think I don't remember. So it probably takes a little bit before they're really best friends. But in the most recent seasons of Ruby, they've probably been more of the best friends partner thing, but I would say it more applies to them the last few volumes than
They're
the first
trauma
few of
bonded?
the show. They're also trauma bonded. Yeah, that's a thing. Is that its own shipping archetype?
Probably trauma bonded.
so sad.
I do like
List all the gay ships here.
Yeah.
That
all of them, every single one of them, trauma bonded. Korrasami, trauma bonded.
yeah. What were you going to say about Bumblebee, Delaney?
Like I think I agree that they're best friends to couple, but like they're also like, it's weird. Ruby's weird. Like,
Yeah. And it's also the thing with Ruby is they feel the need to have large periods of times to. I guess the Ruby meet cute would be, or the boy meets girl would be John and Pyrrha. But other than that,
Right.
there's and then childhood friends. We've read Nora, and so all their other ships take a long time to happen, and we're still waiting on Bumblebee. Beatrice,
but
yeah, you're
basically, like all the relationships in Ruby, like with our 4 main characters, they're just trauma bonded. Like.
I would say friends and family, but yeah, that's true. They've gone through a lot. Beatrice, any Bumblebee thoughts as best friends here?
There's fan theories that they're like soulmates, so maybe they could also fit under that category.
I mean, that would happen to Ruby, so.
And I mean, it's hard because Ruby, but like, do they show like interest in each other earlier in the books? And like book 1 to book 3, you could make the argument for, you can make the argument against. So, but I definitely see them as like I definitely see them as like best friends to couple. I think personally.
Nice, yeah, I think so. And
The one time Dylan revs up for an argument.
I know, I was ready.
Oh, I'm
but-
sorry, it was bubbly.
No, it's okay. I think we're past all the. Hot take. I think Bumblebee's gonna happen at the end of the season. I know we've been spurned before, but
Okay, if
I
this
have
actually
a whole.
happens, I'll watch.
I have a whole list of evidence, but I don't know where to if I want to post it.
We
We'll
had a
see.
bunch of evidence last season.
I know, no, but now I think it's really gonna but no.
Okay.
One of my evidence is all the things from last season apply to this season. Okay, but we're still waiting on Bumblebee. Delaney, any other best friends to couple, or what stands out to you from it?
Always Korrasami, but like I guess I don't know, it's just so appealing. And I will definitely say, like, as a kid, like I really thought this was how it was supposed to be. Like I thought this is how, like, you're supposed to be best friends and then you got together. Like it's what I thought. And funnily enough, that's absolutely not like how me and my wife got together. Like it was very much a like we're gonna date. Like, so it's funny, like kind of.
I do think this is idealized as a perfect
Absolutely,
relationship.
it is.
You should be best friends with your partner before you get together,
Right.
and it's certainly very appealing to me, that notion. And I like that's why I think I love a lot of these
And
couples. But it's very cute. But it's certainly not like a necessity or something that frequently happens in the real world. Yeah, Beatrice, any other best friends couples?
The only one I'm going to mention that if people really like this archetype would be to watch Liz and the Bluebird, which is with Mizore and Nozomi. It's a really interesting take on the best friend to couple because there's like, they touch on like codependency. They touch on like a lot of things. It's not as explicit, I think, as some people on this podcast may like, but it's a really, really beautiful movie, and if you like best friends to couple, this is like a really interesting take on it.
Nice, yeah. From Hibike Sound Euphonium.
Yeah,
spin-off,
but you don't have to watch Hibike to watch this. You can just watch this movie.
Yeah, I don't know what the two Hibike characters would fall under. Best friends? I don't know. I don't even remember. What? Okay. Other ones I wanted to mention for best friends. We talked about Bumblebee. I want to mention White Rose, my favorite all-time
the best
Ruby ship. Ruby and Weiss. I definitely think at this point they're best friends couple. Maybe a flavor of rivals to start off with, right?
Ooh, yeah.
But I think even more of a clear best friends, maybe than Bumblebee, because they've been so close from the early seasons. I was thinking where to put Clance from Voltron, as to me this is like this is an all-time iconic animation ship. Totally not one that happens in the show, but Keith and Lance. And are they rivals because they kind of start off antagonistic? They're not really enemies because they're on the same team. But I think ultimately, if they were gonna get up together at the end of the show, it would have been a best friends type situation.
Yes, I agree. We were robbed, honestly.
We were robbed of Clance for sure. And then what would you classify Shiro and that random boy at the end? I don't know because we didn't actually see them together. Okay. And then, but it was still love it though. Me at least. And then I also want to mention Ryuji and Taiga from Toradora, which to me, if I think romance anime, I think Toradora my all-time favorite. So I think looking back, I think probably that would be a best friends one, but just regardless, wanted to mention.
Ooh, can I recommend a meet cute one? Well, kind of meet cute. Well, boy meets girl, kind of, sort of. I don't know. It's weird, but it's a really cute anime about romance. Kimi ni Toloke. That's a great one for anyone who wants to watch.
Okay, what's the English for it?
Let me look it up because I'll give you the exact one because sometimes I translate it and it's not correct. But yeah, keep talking.
Okay, we'll just look at that in a second. As we move on to childhood friends to couple, a related one, as we mentioned, these would be people who were friends as kids and then later in life get together. Presumably not feelings there from when they're actually kids, and then at some point one of the two probably develops feelings, maybe when they're kids, maybe when they're a little bit older. Not one we found a ton of examples for, actually, but one that we've have some pretty prominent ones here. Yes, From Me to You, Beatrice?
Yeah,
that's the name? Okay, cool. I'll check that out.
Anonymous Cormorant? I don't even know what that is.
That's what I said before we started the call. In the Google Doc, someone's a cormorant. It's like a type of bird. I was like, that's a weird...
It's a bird? I was like, is this a fruit? Like,
it's a weird one to list Google. Okay. This isn't one many of you know who are listening, but to me, this is the ultimate childhood friends couple.
It's so important.
It's very important. Moonboon from Mysticons, Zarya and Kitty Boon. They run the gamut here in terms of relationship. They throw everything at this relationship because they're also kind of a rivals couple. They're childhood friends to rivals for like an episode or two to best friends to a couple, I would say.
So good. Oh.
Yeah, but this is a clear childhood friends as we get flashbacks at some point.
So good. Oh yeah, we get like big flashbacks, and they're literally the best thing ever.
Yeah. Great, wonderful, I think, example of this, and also shows the I think with childhood friends, I guess we didn't go over the intro stuff, so we can talk about that now. But with childhood friends, I feel like the benefit is you get this like innate and intimacy between the two people.
Yes.
Like these two know each other, maybe even more so than best friends. You know this person so well. That's I feel like what you get from Zarya and Kitty when you introduce this. Oh, we knew each other from when we were kids. And I think in an anime sense, there's just like an innate appeal to like your childhood friend, like falling in love with your childhood friend. Yes. Similar in the way to it's like the idealized romance of your best friend. I feel like a lot of people idealize
it's kind of like soulmates too. Like
yeah, it's like in a soulmates way. It's the person I grew up with, the person I know best. I've known this person their entire life. That type of thing. It's like I knew them when they were a different person when they were younger. So I think that a lot of people find that really appealing. Delaney, do you like this one, childhood friends, and do you think this is like overdone at all? We don't have a ton of examples listed here.
I mean, it's hard to say if it's overdone. Like for me, like we're gonna talk about it. Like Kim Possible was like my show, and like a lot of what I was talking about earlier about best friends like getting together came a lot from how much Kim Possible influenced my young life, and like I was obsessed with Kim Possible, and I think
so talk about Kim and Ron as your childhood friends.
So Kim and Ron are like, obviously I'm super into Moonboon because Mysticons is like the best stuff ever, and we were robbed, like Nickelodeon. Why? But like Ron and Kim, like they're just like they're the blueprint, quintessential childhood friends, best friends, and they get together at the very end, and it's just so good. And that's just completely leaving out everything else that makes Kim Possible like literally the best. But like, nice. You see a lot of this still, like, the super competent girl, and then you like the completely useless guy, which I think it's really fun. I do think Marinette and Adrian play into this a little bit, but it kind of flips depending on where we are in the square. But
yeah.
So I love it. Like that's just another, like when we talked about archetypes, I was like, yep, it's friends to getting together because of Kim Possible. Like this is like my big, like this, I mean, it's just like you have 3 seasons of Kim Possible, and then you have 2 movies, and literally one of the movies is like going through time and them growing up together, and like it's literally like A Stitch in Time is all about the relationship, because that's when like it was orchestrated by Draken and Shigo, but they separate them on purpose, and then like it's a whole thing. Like it's so good.
Nice. Yeah, and I think you also mentioned it could be also seen as a best friends
Yes.
to couple one. That's what we talked about, how childhood friends might necessitate being best friends as well.
The distinction here is that like not only do we have a whole movie where we like see their entire relationship, but it's referenced a lot that they've known each other their entire lives. Like, because that's part of their story. Like they're like, yeah, we met in pre-K. Like that's the whole, like it's very important to their, so they definitely belong here as opposed to best friends.
Nice. Yeah, I feel like that's the main thing, is like you get this like I've known this person so long.
Yeah.
Like, it really gives a weight to the proceedings of the romance.
And they're not even just friends. Like it's not just they know each other and grew up together. Like Ron and Kim have been together like best friends the whole time.
Nice. Yeah, because you could have, in terms of Moonboon, you have they're best friends, then they don't see each other for a while, and then they reconnect. Yeah. That's childhood friends, but you could also have the childhood friends version where they've been friends. They're still friends up to this point. They've always been together.
Right.
So it's kind of 2 separate archetypes there.
We have is similar in that they've known each other like their whole lives.
Yeah, so the other example we had listed was Glimbow, Glimmer and Bow from She-Ra. Definitely childhood friends. They reference that. They've always been together. That's a point of...
I'm with Beatriz. I just wanted them... There were ulterior motives, but I just wanted them to be friends.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Glimmer and Bow, I think, different than
but they're
some
super
of these,
cute, and like
some other childhood friends examples where there's most childhood friends to couple are going to be orchestrated. Like, we know this is going to eventually, they're going to be a couple. Now they're going to start them off with this childhood friends backstory. With Glimbow, it's just like they decided at the end, oh, well, they'll be together.
Yeah, like, that was the thing. Yeah, because like with like Katara,
there's no grand plan with Glimbow here.
Yeah, with Katara and Aang, like that was something they talked about, was that Katara and Aang were the DNA of Avatar, and like obviously you can't have Star versus the Forces of Evil without Starco, but they literally were like, oh, I guess they can be together at the end. Like they were like, they just decided.
Yeah, which I kind of love. Like not everything needs to be like so that. Grand. Yeah, such a grand plan from the
right.
Your mileage may vary on whether we should have gotten Glimmer and Bow together, but I do like just the notion that why not give them a couple ending. Like,
well, it's also like the subversion, because Catradora is literally like the DNA of She-Ra.
Yeah,
like that's literally
true. In another show, Glimmer and Bow are the main characters, right? Yeah,
right. And then to have these and then to have like, I mean, we're not going to like Glimmer and Bow are not straight characters, but like this straight presenting like couple as the side,
male female couple.
Yeah, the male female couple as the side is like really great.
Yeah, I think as the side relationship. Yeah, Beatrice, childhood friends to couple thoughts.
I like childhood friends to couple a lot when there's like a gap between. So like Moonboon, when there's like a gap between the last time they've seen each other. So then it's kind of like, because that to me is like a really interesting dynamic, because like you knew each other, but now you're different people. Now what does that do? And I don't know. I find that really interesting. And yeah, I don't know. I it's another one where I'm like, if it's done really well, I love it dearly. So
nice. Yeah, the gap kind of maybe gives a tension. We knew each other so well, now we don't. Have you changed? That type of thing. Yeah. I think that's really appealing. I think both are really. It is kind of like 2 archetypes. I think that's really appealing when they haven't seen each other for a while, and then it's also really appealing if you've always known the person. Yeah, I really love this one, and I think, considering we had struggled to get too many examples here, maybe we're missing some, but I could see this being used more. I think and this is most of the time in terms of a TV show, this is going to be a backstory. Right. Like, so you can just give a character this backstory. You don't need a show. You can do flashbacks. I think that's a really powerful tool to use in terms of displaying intimacy between 2 characters.
Yeah.
And 2 other Ghibli ones that came to mind. There were 2 for this one. Kaguya and Sutamaru from Princess Kaguya. They have a childhood friend's origin. And then Jiro and Naoko from Wind Rise. It's not a traditional one, but they meet when she's a kid, at least. We had some Ghibli examples there. And we have some more in our next category.
The big headliner.
The major remaining one. We're going long, but we need to dig in a little bit on probably for the last time. Then we can go a little bit quicker through the rest of enemies to couple. Everyone's new favorite archetype.
I wonder why.
No, wait a minute. We have to clarify. Everyone's new favorite archetype is best friends to enemies to best friends to couple.
Okay, we'll see what that applies to. But we wanted to note for the enemies to couple, next we have rivals to couple. So a lot of overlap here, but rivals not being people, enemies probably people who are on opposite sides, people who are actually at each other's throats versus rivals are like competing like people.
Yeah, like
typically in a school setting, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. This might be weird, but I see like enemies as like you want to harm the other person.
Yes.
Versus like rival is like, which is why I really like rivals to couple is like you're trying to push each other to be the best you can be. You're like these two. You see, even if you want a minute, you see the other person as your equal, and you're desperately trying to like one up them. You know what I mean? But it's like you're in the end, it ends up just being you two pushing each other to be better. Whereas with enemies, you are actively trying to harm someone, whether it's physically, mentally, like you're trying to, like, I guess rivals to couple is like a race, whereas enemies to couple is, I'm going to push you down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. And yeah, to me, it's really appealing as we can combine a little bit rivals to couple here too, of just people, competing, trying to get better against each other. I think that's really appealing. To me, enemies to couple, my big hang up, as if I were to pick one I don't connect with as much, on the surface, because as we dug into this, I've realized there are some prominent ships that are big to me that you might classify as enemies to couple. But the big problem with this one is that there's an element of if you want to say toxicity here innately. Yeah. If two people are trying to kill each other, how can they end up together? You know,
right.
I think that's like a big question in this archetype. But for many people, that is the appeal. Like there is an innate tension there when you're when you're going against each other. That's like, how can you have more tension than that?
Right.
So, and there is probably ways that people can, and probably this applies to real life too, where people are not on the same side of things and then end up together. I don't know. Is Romeo and Juliet the enemies to couple? Right? I think this is a tired and true archetype in some ways, but one that has crept up in animation to a large extent here. Delaney, what's your relationship with this archetype, and how do you feel it's being used recently?
I didn't like it until Catradora.
Until Catradora, okay.
I really didn't. Like, I never would have been like, or I hated it when they did it in fanfic. Like, I was like, I don't like this.
This is the fanfic archetype.
Yeah,
right?
It absolutely is. And like that was the thing. I've always been best friends to couple, and obviously enemies to couple is like the antithesis of that. And I will say, I am a big Glimmerdoora shipper, big. But then Catradora convinced me. Like they convinced me in the final season. But like a big Glimmerdoora stan. So like I'm always here, best friends to couple. But like I didn't like it until Catradora, and I see the appeal. Like, but I don't like. This is generally not something I like.
Nice. I should mention Glimmerdoora in terms of fanships would be the best friends to couple for She-Ra, and that would be considering that's my fave, that would be the one I was super high on She-Ra. But yeah, Beatrice, what about you? Your relationship with this archetype?
It depends. Again, this is such a cop out, but it depends on how it's
You're
done.
copping out so bad.
I'm so often. Because sometimes it works for me. Like I think of Entrap Deck, right? Where I was like, oh, this is gonna be fun. Oh, this is gonna. So sometimes like it can be very toxic. Sometimes it can be very like there's just something about that tension. There's something about that tension of these two, because a lot of times I feel like enemies and are like also constantly thinking about the other person. So they're just like, there is a very deep bond, whether it's a good bond or a bad bond. There is a bond there between them. Is this
why I hate Zutara? Or okay, so now I'm wondering, do I hate Zutara because it's enemies, just because it competed with Kataang? And is this why I hate this archetype?
No,
is that why?
There's a fair amount of feeling like uncomfortable with the idea of like your family's responsible for like the atrocities.
There's a lot. There's a lot.
So there's a lot to unpack there. So I don't think it's simply because you shipped Kataang that like.
Well, no, I mean as a 10-year-old. Like,
well, maybe as a 10-year-old.
Yeah,
so
we
opinions are a little bit different.
That's good. I do think that.
We have Zutara under opposites attract, which we have as another archetype, but there's going to be a lot of overlap between opposites attract and enemies, just because different opposite types of people might be on opposite sides. But I love the way Beatrice described it as like, if someone's your enemy, aren't you thinking about them all the time if they're so important to you that they're your enemy?
That's literally part of why Catradora, like, because it was like, oh my god, they're obsessed with each other. Like, even without the like obviously the best friends thing like played into it, but that's like.
Right.
Yeah. To me, I totally understand the appeal. Like, think about you in real life. Do you have an enemy? Like probably no for most people. Like, so, like an enemy, someone you have to there has to be such passion there. Like, it's bad passion, but like it has to exist to the extent that most of us aren't even experiencing it. So I can totally see the like fantasy there.
Yeah. So there's there's value to that. I understand it.
Well, it's kind of like best friends to couple or childhood friends to couple. It's built in, so it's easy to tap into.
Right. And there's like, and if we're just purely thinking of like two couple, like this means that there is like a journey, there's an arc. One of them is going to flip to the other side.
Right.
If there is this sort of like I don't like, it's like they were enemies and now they're not. It's not that you're still enemies and you're a couple unless, well, there is a certain pocket of people who dig that. So there's also that. But yeah.
Yeah, you'll have to not be. I think you can still be on opposite sides of whatever conflict, but you can't be like actual enemies in terms of relationship.
Like it turns into much more macro than a micro type of situation. Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, sure. It's not like people are shipping, people are actively trying to kill each other. Like, it's like you want the promise of them turning that into this like romantic passion. I guess that would be the appeal. And I totally see that. So yeah, Catradora is the one that's like the headliner for this right now. But Catradora also one of the headliners for childhood friends to couple, which we didn't even mention.
Yeah.
But you can't talk about Catradora without talking about them being enemies. Like, you just can't.
I mean, yeah, I think that is like clearly the more prominent one.
That is the tragedy of the story. Is that they care so much
childhood friends, two enemies, two couple. Yeah,
to the point that they are going to harm each other. That's how far.
And they have hurt each other.
Exactly. They do harm each other, and that's what you're seeing. And especially now that we know how it ends. Seeing it from like that perspective makes it all sadder when you do see them harm each other, knowing how they feel about each other. And it's like how far this miscommunication goes. And it's like, it's really great. It's really great. The angst, I love it.
Yeah, a lot of angst. This is the angst. I mean, if you want
big angst.
Hurt. What is the shipping
hurt
tag?
Comfort.
Hurt comfort.
Oh, I love some hurt.
I do not.
You don't even know.
If you're someone who actively searches out the hurt comfort tag on AO3, you might like enemies to come.
That might be something you're into.
I do love me some hurt comfort.
Yeah, can we do those jokes for but yeah, so these are all these enemy associations. Not a lot. There's probably not a ton of ships where people are actively super enemies like Catradora. So personally, we're going through preparing for this podcast, I'm like, okay, here's the one I don't like, enemies to couple. I don't like Catradora. But then I'm like, oh, I'm listing out all the Ghibli ships. But wait,
you love those.
Here's the two most prominent Ghibli ships. You might classify them as enemies to couple. I feel like this is really interesting. Chihiro and Haku from Spirited Away. Initially, Haku is the servant of the villain, and Chihiro is like actively working against her, and so they are kind of in opposition. And from Chihiro's perspective, this is like the appeal. It's like, oh, it's the cute boy who's like the enemy. Like, it's like she's like the Catradora shipper, and it's like Haku. Yeah, so they become friends. So they're kind of like enemies to quick friends to couple. And are they really even a couple? It's more of just like a kind of romantic ending. But I think that totally has at least that feel to it. Chihiro and Haku. And then another one that totally Princess Mononoke, Ashitaka, and San have the
straight up tries to kill him. Just
in terms of the trying to kill each other. There you go, Ashitaka and San. Right, our Ashitaka, I would say, actively tries to not be enemies with San, whereas she
is like
she's trying to be enemies with him, and
she's like, I'm going to kill you right now.
He's trying to be a mediator in a conflict between San and another side. So
did you add this?
I mean okay. How many times have you seen like a recreation of their cute mate?
I agree. Yeah, I was going to say that. I was going to say that. Like, you have seen every enemies to couple thing you have ever shipped ever in your life in the redraw.
Yeah, so when
like,
Ashitaka meets San, she is Yeah, Ashitaka sees San spitting out, sucking and spitting out blood from one of her wolf parents, and is instantly smitten with her in one of the all-time great scenes ever. It's just the all-time iconic visual, and it's like incredible that is what gets Ashitaka to fall in love with San.
And then there's also the redraw of when she's trying to stab him.
Yes, that's another iconic one too. But yeah, that's true. So the thing is, like, I'm like, oh, I don't like Catradora because they're trying to kill each other. Well, I kind of do like Ashitaka and San, and she tries to kill him. So maybe I'm a little bit of a hypocrite here. I don't know. I think it's.
I'm really happy for this journey that you went on inside yourself. It's great.
Look, the thing is, I'm not like a huge Ashitaka San. I'm not like reading fanfic and stuff, But I appreciate it watching this movie. So that's why I can totally appreciate this, even if it's not something I'm searching out fics for. So yeah, I thought like, so the thing is, if you think of enemies to couple, here's another point I wanted to make as like this recent trend because of Catradora and maybe Lumity has like a rivals aspect, not traditional enemies, but, there's like, recently in animation, this seems to be a bigger thing and seems like it might continue. Actually, Ghibli was doing this like, and I've been trying to argue Spirited Away, Princess Mononoke, along with Nausicaa, two of the all-time influential animation pieces that are so influential on everything. Maybe the reason that we're seeing so many enemies to couple now is that the people who grew up on Chihiro and Haku and Ashitaka and San are now creating their own properties, and they saw that these enemies to couple relationships that,
I also have
were some
another
of their
theory.
iconic ones.
They were all Zutara shippers.
And Zutara, I do think that would be another one.
Like, honestly, I think it's legit. Like, I really do think it's legit.
I think Zutara shippers are now creating stuff, and that's why we're seeing stuff.
And I also say, like, enemies to couples, like, even outside of animation, like, you mentioned Romeo and Juliet. It's tried and true. You see Raylo happened, like, you see it in a lot of different, in older forms in older movies. Like, you see this kind of, like, this is a tension that it's like it didn't start and end with it didn't start with like Mononoke or something. This is something we've seen for centuries. So
whenever you say Raylo, I'm just like that's a fanship, right? I just blocked out the ending.
So no, unfortunately, it is not a fanship.
I can't even remember what happened.
I know. I went through this entire time we were talking. I was just going Raylo, and then I was mad about it. So it's okay.
So, but yeah. So it's a. People like this archetype.
This is a huge one. Yeah, it's an all-time iconic one. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about upcoming movie. Hasn't even came out yet. Raya and the Last Dragon.
We're already shipping this.
Because there's a long-form Raya trailer that came out. We're recording this February 8th, and instantly Twitter is blowing up with Raya and Namaari fan art as we see Raya and Namaari as we don't know anything. It hasn't came out yet. The presumably the person she's opposing. And we potentially also saw that they're childhood friends, maybe. So this might be another Catradora situation.
We were already shipping it, and then we were like, they're friends. Like they grew up together. And we're like, oh my god, super shipping this.
Yeah, so we're about to see one of has Disney had enemies to couple before in the Disney princess canon?
Tangled, maybe, sort of.
Tangled is kind of like a rivals-ish.
Hit him in the head with the frying pan.
Enemies to couple, like. I mean, we've had a couple to enemies in Frozen, like a backwards one, like a flip it around.
Yeah.
With Hans and Anna were a thing, but then he becomes
what are you talking about? No, you're right. It's because I blocked him out because he sucks. Okay, sorry.
Well, that's the point.
Yeah, I hate him so much.
Yeah, they're supposed to. Yeah. So we'll see what Raya and Namaari. Any other Raya thoughts while we're on the topic?
I'm so pumped, and it's going to be so good.
Well, Oh yeah, sorry. Keep going. Sorry.
Well, I just wanted to say something I'm excited about with Raya, and since we've talked about Disney throughout this, is that we're going to have an older, like, main character as opposed to them always being like 14. So this is exciting.
Yeah, how old is Raya? I mean, I think we had like Anna and Elsa. I think she's maybe a little older than or maybe the same age as Elsa.
Or like late teens, early 20s. At least in Frozen. Yeah. But yeah,
Ghana's supposed to be a little younger.
Speaking of, doesn't the dragon have the same eyes as Elsa?
I hate you.
Doesn't
you were gonna say that.
Do the thing? I just don't understand Disney. I don't understand.
The dragon Sona of Elsa? Is that what you're saying?
I did see the tweets that were like, how did they do Pixar mom face on a dragon? And I was like, you're not wrong.
I just don't understand Disney. You have such talented people. You have so much money. Why can't you?
I think they want it to look like that, probably.
I know that's exactly. But why? I
don't know why. I don't know. Okay, well, I'll have to. You spoiled us on this take before the podcast, but
Yeah.
I don't like the thought of the Elsa Dragon. I don't like it.
I thought everyone just agreed.
No,
that
I saw all the stuff that they were like, how did they like mess up the like do the whole like Pixar syndrome with the dragon face? But
okay, so we'll see. Yeah, Raya looks great.
I'm pumped. I'm so pumped for Raya. And then the new and I was already like, I'm shipping them, and they were like, oh, they grew up together, and I was like, oh boy, I am in deep. Also, she's like bald. Like, of course, I love her. Like,
does she have like an undercut or a bald or something?
I think her head shaved. I'm trying to
half of her head shaved.
So good.
Might be but yeah. So we'll see if that's an actual.
Myself, my wife has currently. She now has she's already buzzed her hair, but this is the second time she's buzzed her hair. It's just a thing. That's all I'm gonna say.
We'd be surprised if this actually happened, right, Raya and
Namaari?
Oh,
absolutely shook. Okay, it would be like if
because Disney film is still not done as much as Lumity is breaking barriers for Disney television. We've not seen this from Disney film.
Elsa to be gay. I don't want my hopes to get up because I really thought she was going to be gay in Frozen 2. Like I was ready, and then, but like we've had a little bit of gay here and there, and it is the year of our Lord 2021, and like Disney, just do it, just please. Pull the trigger.
We've had side characters. This would be a huge step.
This would be a huge
very
step.
Minor side characters, but again, consider the fact that Disney TV went from nothing to Lumity. It is at least possible, but this is a higher stakes property.
We'll see.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna like get my hopes up. Am I gonna ship them the whole time? Yes.
Yeah, might be like an implied tension. I could see.
I will say I'm gonna be super shook if it happens. Like I will be.
It would also just be surprising if the actual villain like ended up with the main character, even if it was man woman.
Yeah.
Like it would already be a little bit subversive. So we'll be seeing if Raya and Namaari is a thing. Last one we had highlighted for enemies to couple. We had some talk about what to classify this as. Lapidot from Steven Universe, Lapis and Peridot, ultimately a fanonship, but one that was
very popular.
The most popular Steven Universe ship for most of its run.
Really?
I would say definitely the most popular. We ultimately go with Peridot being asexual, kind of like not super heavily implied on screen, but definitely something they're intending to do. But yeah, Lapis starts as a prisoner of Peridot, so that would be, I guess, an enemies beginning for them. I think Lapidot doesn't have an enemies to couple flavor, but it acts as an enemies to couple beginning, if that makes sense.
I would agree.
I think they may be more of a best friends to couple.
It's
flavoring.
More like they're so awkward that they just like it's weird, kind of how they are.
Yeah, they're their own thing.
They're kind of like an outcast couple. Like it's kind of like
yeah, I could see that.
They like get married without being together, and they go live in a barn.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. That's literally what happens.
That's interesting.
And they have a farm. Okay, apparently having a farm is just going to be a ship now. Like, oh, they have a farm together. They're together. Like, come on. Like, also they have a dog. Like, come on.
Yeah, they have a dog too,
like,
so
they're together.
Dog parents, if not actual couple. Yeah. Delaney, any others for enemies or final thoughts here?
Oh, so we can't talk about enemies to couple without talking about one of the biggest faninships ever, Kigo, Kim and Shigo.
Kigo. I heard Kyo, and I was like, Kyo.
Yeah, no.
From Kim Possible.
Impossible. Yeah, we got Kim and Shigo. Like, that's kind of like, that's a really basic, like, that's like, come on. Like, they literally, like, hand-to-hand combat every episode, and they're always, like, doing, like, snippy remarks. Like, they're literally, like, the perfect couple to ship. Like, it's ridiculous. And then you also have, like, you find out more about Shigo's backstory. She actually was a superhero. And then there's even one where like there's an episode where she turns good and like all this stuff, and she like teaches it because you find out that she wanted to be a school teacher and she ends up teaching at their high school. Like it's a whole thing. Like come on, it's the thing. And then I didn't ship them when I was younger because I was literally such a Ron Kim like stan. But like there's obviously an appeal here.
Nice. Yeah. Maybe the Raya Namaari of their time.
Yes, absolutely. Definitely.
Okay.
Like the blueprint.
The blueprint.
Well, and then also like it's funny though because a lot of people didn't watch season 4 of Kim Possible, but like there actually was a season after the drama of the last Kim Possible movie, and it follows Ron and Kim to graduation, and there's like a big fight. Like, it's ridiculous. Well, Draken and Shigo actually like become good. Like, they kind of like, they have to save the world. And then Draken and Shigo get together, which is like terrible. But like, so you did have the flip. Like, they did become good guys.
Interesting.
Yeah, but they also you had to tell me about Draken and Shigo.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Like,
Sorry.
thanks.
You're welcome.
Shiver me timbers.
I hate you. You already used that one. That's
well,
bad.
I'm using it again because I'm just
Who knows? Who knows?
You're so shivered.
That
Your
represents
timbers are so
her
shivered.
emotions right now. Yeah. Is that how that works? Okay. Beatrice, you mentioned Entrap Deck earlier.
Oh yeah, but I mean, I want to first talk about Kigo, just simply to say like that. I wasn't on the Kim and Ron ship, and I didn't know what shipping was when I was like 9-10 years old. But I loved them, and I didn't realize I was shipping them as I was watching the show. I didn't understand why.
When I was shipping Ron Kim, I didn't have an understanding of shipping.
Yeah, so I didn't even realize that was even a possibility, and then I was like, oh, that's why I loved them so much. That's why I found Ron so annoying. Like, go eat your nacho. Let the girls fight. Jesus.
Yeah, right. Yes, exactly.
Is basically how I felt throughout the entirety of that show.
It'd be like, Draken, shut up. I just want to watch Kimi Shigo fight.
But yeah, and Trap Deck, they're great. I love them because I think I just loved how, like, you know, I love the evil mastermind who thinks they're amazing, and then you have the actual super smart one who's actually amazing, being like, yeah, you're great.
So
you know what I mean?
Like, but that's literally Draken and Shigo.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like to me when you mentioned it.
Like, it just didn't work for me because I had her with Kim. It's like you're saying.
Oh no, I agree with you. I'm just messing with you.
It didn't work. That didn't work. Maybe it's also because, like, I don't know. Draken
Kim Shigo is way better than Shigo Draken, like, obviously.
And also, Shigo actually shows interest in him, and like in much more overt fashion. I didn't watch the 4th season of Kim Possible, so I never saw them actually showing interest in each other. Whereas with them, like with Entrap Deck, I actually knew it was coming. I was like, they're planting the seeds, it's happening, and then when it happened, and no one believed me, and I was like,
no one believed me.
Like, I am the captain of that ship.
Yeah, you are the Entrap Deck captain.
It's way better than Shigo Draken.
Let's set sail.
Oh my
and last ones I wanted to mention, Dipper and Pacifica from Gravity Falls.
Fave.
My fave. Fan and ultimately, it kind of happens in the comic after the fact. But,
Dylan, this is like your ship. Like, this was like you. It was just you and like 5 other people on this boat.
No, other people are into this, but I was very into it. Yeah, Dipper and Pacifica. Enemies, I guess. Kind of rivals, enemies, yeah.
I thought they were going to happen. Like, I felt it.
I know, it could have happened. Could have. That's why we're doing Lumity now, though. That's why we started Lumity off where they were, because of
Which, Pacifica. That's good. I agree.
Pacifica walks, so Lumity could run, etc., etc. And something else I was thinking about. You guys can tell me whether you agree. My 2 original ships, my Nick.com forums when I was like 10, posting on the Nick.com forums. Jimmy Neutron. Let's do Jimmy and Cindy. From Jimmy Neutron.
Yeah, Cindy the blonde.
Yeah. Okay. Enemies, rivals, you know.
Oh my god, I shipped them so hard.
I shipped them so hard. And then Fairly Odd Parents, Timmy and Trixie Tang. I think that's her.
They're super meat cute. I also shipped them.
Are those those are both enemies, kind of.
Well, Trixie,
how was Trixie his enemy?
Trixie wasn't his enemy. Trixie was just way out of his league because she was like in a completely different social circle.
They're both like not. I mean, Jimmy and Cindy are more antagonistic.
Oh, Jimmy and Cindy like hate each other. Oh my god, I feel
like they're more rivals though.
No, I'm just thinking about
it's not a war or anything, but
I'm just thinking about the Jimmy Cindy episode where they have to keep like when they like got mixed up and they have to like pick the traits. And they're like,
there's also the Jimmy Cindy when they're on a deserted island. That's iconic.
So good.
I just remember that, even though so we'll do Jimmy Cindy for that. Yeah, it could be seen as a rival. So let's talk about rivals to couple.
It's definitely rivals.
Because we have a few here, but rivals, we talked about it being maybe less on opposite sides, more just competing with each other, and maybe in a school setting. Definitely the one that stood out to me was Akko and Diana from Little Witch Academia, which for about half the season at least there. This is the Lumity comparison, except they're rivals for a little bit longer.
Yeah, they're rivals for much, much longer. So that's why, like, if Dylan, you had made the argument that you made for Lumity being not rivals with them, with Akko and Diana, I would have been like, no way, they're totally rivals. But.
Yeah, I mean, I think Diana, they're definitely right from Diana's perspective, but for Akko, is a little bit lose-like and trying to be friends.
Yeah, she's trying to be friends, but she's also like, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to be a great witch. She's also has that kind of, she's trying to like she's proving her worth to her rival. And it's like, why do you care so much about what she thinks, Akko? Tell me.
They're gay.
Yeah. It's good. You love it, Delaney. And so this is like, to me now, the new modern preeminent rivals to couple one. Yeah. Delaney, you also wanted to mention Hiccup and Astrid from How to Train Your Dragon.
Yes, from How to Train Your Dragon. Oh my god, this is another one of my like OG ships. Oh my god, I was like super down to Train Your Dragon. It's really embarrassing. So
many of us were.
It's so good. So Hiccup and Astrid are like very much quintessential rivals to couple because Astrid is supposed to be like the best Viking, and then Hiccup, because he ends up befriending a dragon and knows how to like he does like dragon magic basically, and then Astrid's like, "What the heck? You're cheating!" And then they go on the super romantic like dragon ride. So good. I super ship Hickstrid. I read a lot of fan fiction, like a lot.
That was a big one when we were younger.
It was a big one.
Big ship.
I watched it in Spanish class. Because I didn't watch it when it came out because the trailers made How to Train Your Dragon look stupid. And then I watched the movie and I was like, this is the best movie ever. I haven't seen the third one yet because the second one broke me. But like,
how does this correlate with Spanish?
Oh, we would just watch movies and with Spanish subtitles. That's it.
Not even the dub.
Not
Come
even
on,
the dub.
Spanish teacher.
No, absolutely.
That's just. Yeah, I mean that's just school is turning.
This was literally just to make us like be good on Fridays. That's it. After we'd finish a unit, we watched this. We watched Tangled, but we didn't finish it, and then, which is why I've never seen Tangled. And then
for me, Finding Nemo is the one they just put on over and over.
We also watched
classes
Finding
in school.
Nemo.
Yeah, Finding
not
Nemo
in Spanish, but in any.
Oh my god!
That's when they played every time.
We would watch Selena, and we wouldn't finish it until finally my senior year. My teacher was going to be out. We were going to watch Selena, and I was like, "Can you please start it from the middle?" And he was like, "Why?" And my entire class was like, "We've never finished it." Like, I had never seen the end of that.
The class length is shorter than the movie. Yeah, that's
classic, I was like, "Bro, like, I've never seen the end of this movie."
Okay. And for the other thing for Rivals is that we talked about this one, I think, several times as like a subcategory for others. So we were thinking, like, is Rivals couple more of a flavor or more of a secondary characteristic first than something that frequently happens in ships? We only really had two major ones that we listed here, that were like true rivals to couple. So in that regard, is this a very underused archetype? I feel like we could see a lot more of this.
Yes. I will also say, I think also there are a lot of very popular, I think, rivals to couples ships that aren't canon. So I think that's why maybe they don't come to mind immediately. Like, I don't know. I'm not familiar with the, like, for me, when I think rivals, I also think like Gary and Ash, and I'm like, is that a couple in the Pokemon fandom? I don't know. But and then I know Naruto and Sasuke were like a thing, and they were enemies at one point, I think. But
oh yeah, we probably should have mentioned Naruto ships, but I don't.
I'm not familiar enough with them to know, but I know that they were a big ship, and I feel like they could definitely at one point they might have been rivals. So, like, there are a lot of ships that maybe just don't come to mind because.
Yeah, it is probably a lot of fanon ships. You're right. Yeah, so I feel like if I were like gonna do enemies to couple, if I were making something, I would do it as a rivals, like, and because also like school settings doesn't have to be school.
Oh my god!
Like,
okay, so me and Dylan would write this like school, like it'd be like Ruby but better.
No, Ruby, but no plot. Like just
Ruby, no plot.
That's what I want to do. Honestly,
it's just school.
Yeah, no, and it would be, you could do a great rivals.
Oh my god, it'd be a slice of life.
Yes, slice of life. Yes,
okay, I'm
yes.
here. All right, we're gonna work.
But honestly, though, out of all these ones we've talked about, I think Rivals Couple stands out as the one that hasn't been utilized in the canon quite as much as.
I agree with that.
As it could be. Yeah, that'd be cool to see more of. We mentioned Opposites Attract as another archetype we came up, not in the same vein as these other ones, but this is something you hear a lot. Like, these characters are opposites attract. It's something you hear in real life romance too. Like, should you go for someone who is dissimilar to you?
I think it's BS.
I am on that side as well, but there's many people who believe in the properties of the opposites attract. And this is, to me, Zutara, like, in the Avatar fandom, like, Zuko and Katara was the one you always heard, like, opposites attract,
Also, literally, it was just fire and water. Like, that was literally the only basis
opposite
for
elements.
that shit.
Right. I mean, I do think they're somewhat dissimilar people, but they also have some similarities.
Well, I definitely think, for me, the biggest argument for Zutara, which I could agree with, was when they Zuko and Katara go to confront the murderer, like the person who killed Katara's mom.
Yeah, in that episode, they're much more similar than Katara to Aang. So I think there's some arguments for them being more similar in that regard. But yeah, just two characters that are like opposite personality from each other. Some other ones I thought of Ruby and Sapphire from Steven Universe.
Right.
So cute. Babies.
Those are like kind of like our archetypal alien characters, and those are like opposite kind of archetype personalities.
Yeah.
At least what they start out as, I think they develop into more complex, probably a little bit more similar people. I thought of Wally and Eva from Wally.
God, I love Wally.
Yes, Wally, Eva being the hardened, battle one, and Wally being the soft, kind of more sensitive one.
I definitely ship those robots.
Oh yeah, gotta ship those.
That movie makes me cry. I cry every time I watch Wally.
Yes. And then we mentioned Bubbline. Bubbline, not an easy ship to characterize. I would say it definitely has opposites attract qualities to it, as their Princess Bubblegum, Marceline, and Adventure Time are pretty different people. Bubbline also, I think, very not similar to the rest of animation ships, as it's presented as like I describe it as former flames reconnecting, people who used to be together now kind of like reconnecting with each other. That's the context we see them in the show, although they were probably some sort of like traditional couple to start with.
Yeah,
as we kind of saw in the recent special. Yeah, but Bubbline, when you think of ships, like we've characterized all these like ton of very prominent animation ships, and then you think of Bubbline, it's very different from the rest.
I mean, if you think about it, in the show, also like it's crazy.
Show,
like in the show, like they only had like 7 minutes of screen time total or something. Like their interactions were like much smaller in comparison to
until the end of the series, but for
a while, like them interacting together, like it wasn't like a lot. It wasn't like it's like you had to watch like an entire season's worth to really understand. And what basically I'm saying is they were very effective with the time they spent on them. But they're an interesting couple.
Yeah, and then one probably born out of limitations in presenting queer couples, and also just they because of that they presented in a really different way, which I think was really interesting.
Yeah.
Beatrice, you'd others to mention for opposites attract.
Oh yeah, well, just Sailor Neptune and Sailor Uranus are great. For those who know, they know. And then there's another for those who know, they know. Kirari and Sayaka from Kakegurui, who are just, if you love like two people who just don't understand each other but are just fascinated by each other, they're great. They're so good.
I will say my wife loves Sailor Moon, and that's the only reason I know anything about Sailor Neptune and Sailor Uranus.
Love them.
Nice. I think for characterizing opposites attract, it's harder to do it than these other ones because it's more of like a concept than a fledged out archetype. It's more of just like a quality of two people.
Yeah, and it's also like I feel like there's an extent to the oppositeness. It's not that
there has to be.
It's not like they're complete opposites. You know what I mean? I have yet to see like two people that are just complete opposites.
Yeah, I think we have two here. Probably the closest you can get, Ruby and Sapphire and Wally Eva, is like they're robots that are different opposite models. Like that's probably the closest you can get. And even then, once they get personalities, they start to become more similar.
And this is also very loosely like you can say like physically, if they physically look different, you're like, look, opposites attract. Like look, this like I don't know, this girl's like really buff and this guy is like a slowpoke. Like look at them, like they're so different.
You can't believe you picked slowpoke.
I don't know. That's just the first word that came to mind.
Yeah, I think the appeal being maybe the striking difference in personality and appearance. I think it can be very appealing to people.
So,
again, it's like other ways of tension forming. It's like, oh, they're so different. Yeah. There's a lot of tension there.
Like I'll say, like the Kirari and Sayaka are the only like couple for me that I've like experienced that under the opposites attract category that actually that there's substance to that archetype specifically. Other times it feels like a little bit superficial, that label, the opposites attract.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
I can see that.
I feel like, if anything, the label is overused rather than the shipping. Yeah.
Well, it's like Zutara, honestly, isn't really opposites attract because they're actually
now that we're breaking it down,
extremely similar. Like they're actually
honestly,
character, like personality wise, they're very similar characters.
It's just that one's water and one's fire. That's
literally it.
Those are opposites.
Yeah, everyone's just like, oh, God. I'm like, it's literally just their elements. They're actually extremely similar.
Yeah. That's why it can be it can be useful
interesting
that
avatar shipping.
And they kind of they kind of go on similar journeys as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know we were getting into this. Interesting stuff from Delaney.
I know, because I absolutely hate
I didn't expect it. Doesn't sound like it from your analysis. I'm just okay.
Dylan, do not start this with me.
No, I'm not starting. We're closing things out here with some.
I'm gonna start as soon as the pod's over. I'm just gonna start screaming at Dylan.
No, you'll have forgotten because we have we have interesting things to close out on. Hopefully. Quick hits 10 things here. Other archetypes, ranging from concepts to more fledged out archetypes. How about a love triangle? Here's the thing. We're like, oh, love triangle, so overused, right?
But they're never actually love triangles.
Hard to actually name many love triangles in animation. The big one we thought of was Korra, Mako, and Bolin in Book 1 of Legend of Korra, kind of presented as a love triangle. And then you could argue Makorra and Korrasami later in the show have love triangle aspects, although they don't really overlap in their feelings.
They're just like, bye.
But yeah, I mean, I think you get the Twilight love triangle, right? But it actually hasn't happened that much in animation.
Weren't there like maybe it's on occasion because you guys mentioned in Star versus like at one point one of them felt one way for the other and another point maybe
you could argue Star, Marco, and Tom as a
they're absolutely a love triangle because Tom and Marco are in love with each other.
It's a recycling symbol love triangle because Marco and Tom also so
I actually think they're more of a love triangle than Korra, Mako, and Bolin.
Yeah, I mean, it was like a secondary aspect of the larger best friends couple, whereas Mako, I feel like in Korra Book 1, it has the love triangle flavor overtly, They play it up. Like, really, Korra and Bolin, there's like 1 or 2 episodes of Korra Bolin material, but it feels like it when you're watching.
They make it first season of Korra is just drama.
Yeah, it's the drama. I think love triangle is associated with drama. Yeah, hot take. I would like to see a really well done love triangle in an animated show. I feel like we haven't really seen it.
I have literally only experienced one good love triangle and so of course, they're very common.
By the way, love triangle. Oh yeah, love triangle. Fruits basket, right, Beatrice?
That's definitely one that there's definitely the elements of will they, won't they, who's she gonna pick? Fruits basket absolutely has love triangle elements.
I guess Western animation. Probably there's a few more in anime.
Anime. There's commonly, at least in shoujo anime, there is a common one where you have the one girl who's in between 2 guys, like Skip Beat is another one that comes to mind for me.
We want to mention Red String of Fate, which is a very anime archetype. We mentioned Destiny.
I when I first wrote it down, I wrote down soulmates type situation.
Soulmates, yeah. In anime, this is manifested by the symbol of the Red String of Fate, which is probably not like a Western thing, so not super familiar to us, I guess. But it's just literally just a red string.
I'm only familiar with it because of fanfic.
Yeah, you'll get fanfic a lot with this. The big one, Taki and Mitsuha from Your Name.
Right.
One of the most prominent animation ships in recent memory. Hugely popular movie. You could argue them for, I guess, but they have a very weird framed relationship, right? So I guess like a soulmates type, Red String of Fate type. I mean, they're literally Red String of Fate in the movie. Yeah. So I think that's probably where you put them.
Yeah, for sure. There's also Tuxedo Mask and Sailor Moon. Because, past lives, they keep meeting again. They keep falling for each other no matter how many times someone hits the reset button. So I was the one who wrote this thing down. And it's interesting because some people hate the idea of 2 people coming to 2 people destined to be free with each other. Because then it removes this kind of freedom and choice and all that. But then some people love it. You know, they love the idea of that one person who's meant to be with you, right? That will find you no matter what happens. Or if they don't, it's like the biggest tragedy.
Not animated, but I really liked that in Hancock.
I don't think I've ever seen Hancock.
But that is fun because you wouldn't think it because Hancock's like the jerk superhero movie with Will Smith in it. But that's actually in the movie. Like it's actually like
I was like, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I was like, is that all right? Cool.
You know, it's in that movie. It's really good actually.
Oh, I've heard it's a really good movie, but I didn't know that.
Well, I think no, I don't want to I mean, the movie's been out forever, so spoilers for Hancock. But like you, like what actually like spurs the movie, like the reason Hancock is the way he is because. And like he runs into her and she's like, no, I'm trying to have a normal life because she actually has a family and stuff. But that's them. Like they always wake up and like they like fall in love and like that's like their whole thing.
Wow. See, there's something about that. There's something about that. So like,
yeah, no, it's good. I really liked it.
So yeah,
that sounds like Palm Springs' recent movie. So I think you summarized it well, Beatrice, with like the pros and cons of the destined to be with each other. Another one we have, a not healthy relationship. You just call this bad for each other, maybe. You could call this a toxic relationship. But that's more of like a characterization you might make, but maybe a relationship that's presented as purposefully people that are bad for each other.
Yeah.
So one I thought that might apply here, don't flame me too hard, Pearl and Rose from Steven Universe. I would argue not that you shouldn't ship it or that they're not really cute at times, but I would argue the show ultimately is presenting them kind of as not good for each other. At least Rose towards Pearl.
Yeah, I was going to say ultimately it's that it was bad for Pearl.
Bad for Pearl, yeah. I think that's probably what the show's intent is. We mentioned Makorra. I think the show, I would argue, again, don't, people who ship it might be upset, but I think ultimately the show shows them arguing and not being a good relationship. I think it's valid to show like relationships that are. Yeah,
like season 2, like they're not good.
In season 2, probably specifically. I think it's interesting showing relationships that are ultimately not good for at least one of the characters.
Which I think that's good, especially in like children's animation.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the problem a lot of times that comes with like these type of bad for each other and healthy couples is that sometimes, and you don't usually see this as often in children's animation, you see it more with adult media, but sometimes it is romanticized and it's seen as like the ideal. And that's why it's like a lot of times like this type of characteristic I tend to not really like. Because it's being portrayed because of how it's being portrayed. It's often like through the context of like, aren't they so romantic? Aren't they so good for each other? Like not good for each other, but like, aren't they like what you should strive to seek and love?
Yeah.
It's bad for you, but it's like, but that's what makes it so good. And it's like, no, you
like,
should.
That's a real thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Another example, this is something that me and my wife have talked about is that like growing up, you watch a lot and like. Me and my wife don't fight. Like, we don't we might disagree on things, but like that's something I think that media has done a really bad job of is normalizing like argument. Like obviously you can argue, but like you know what I mean, like fighting.
Yeah, but really intense arguments. Yeah, like I do think that is normalized in media.
They
romanticized maybe.
Or like something's wrong if you don't fight. Like you hear that a lot. Like people are like,
yeah.
And I'm like, no, my wife and I don't fight because we talk to each other. Like
right, for sure. And saying that, the one time that the ship that really worked for me that falls under this is like from Utena. It's Judy and Shiori from there. They're so bad for each other, and it's just so sad to watch because all you want is Judy to be happy, but also like she loves Shiori so freaking much, and you're just like. I can't hate you for it, but I want so much. I want you to be happy, and that means being with her, but that's bad for you, and it's so painful, but it's so great to watch and experience. Just throwing that out.
Nice. Okay, yeah. And I'm sure there's some others we could classify under this one as well to be interesting to get into. Yeah. But last one I wanted to mention is that we talked about two-person relationships up to this point, as that is very much the societal kind of standard that's presented. But how about polyamorous relationships? I did eventually think of two very minor ones that have been presented recently in animation. Fluorite in Steven Universe, one of the off colors is a fusion of 6 gems.
Fluorite. Right.
So that would be a 6-person relationship in the fusion to relationship kind of metaphor. And then in BoJack, we have an explicit one with Holly Hawk has a bunch of dads that are seen a few times. So we have gotten, at least, from 2 of our most progressive shows, minor depictions of polyamorous relationships, but there really have not been a ton of them, as this hasn't been as normalized by society. Maybe one you could argue maybe the crystal gems in general in Steven Universe, as a big polyamorous relationship. I think that is something that you could look as the end of the show as them all kind of being together in some fashion. I mean, they all kind of fuse together in different combinations. So I think that's pretty interesting.
And of course, there's Alexandrite.
And then there are like three-person ships. There's Alexandrite itself. And then how about like harem anime? Not depiction of polyamorous relationships usually, but I think it's interesting to think about harem anime being there's one main character, there's a bunch of different love interests, like a love triangle times 10. There's just a bunch of different, and then the main character goes on arcs getting to know each of the different ones. Like that's its own archetype, a harem one. But then, there's like the harem ending when the main character ends up with all of them. That's a little bit, not exactly like a traditional polyamorous relationship, but could be that. As that, I was going to mention Clanad earlier, and we wanted to mention it here in the harem section, as Clanad is a harem anime, and then in the second season goes to being a traditional, more of a traditional relationship that's played out, which was really interesting. Yeah.
I have seen a lot more of. Granted, this also just might be something as I've gotten older and become more aware. Like there were a lot of people obviously shipping like these. There aren't any canon ones aside from the 2 that you mentioned, with like the best friend squad and She-Ra, like having
shipping all of the
like
the
Glimmer
together.
Because I actually really like I mean there's there's technicalities with like people's sexualities, but like you have Glimmer Bow and Adora, or like Glimmer Bow Adora and Catra. Like I think they're fun.
Yeah. I love that.
There's also Catra, Adora, and Glimmer. Like, there's some great ones.
Yeah,
like,
you hear about those as OT4, OT3.
Right.
Yeah, which I think are not traditionally seen, more of like in a silly manner than as like a serious polyamorous relationship.
I definitely don't think they're like. I mean, obviously, there's some people who ship it, and
I think people do legitimately ship them as that, and then there's people that don't. Right. Yeah, but it would be wonderful to see a well-defined, like actually explicit, prominent polyamorous relationship in modern animation or anything.
Period. Full stop.
Yeah.
Yeah. So wanted to mention that last because, relationship doesn't necessarily just mean 2 people. So we're talking about 2-person ships mostly. All of these could apply in some fashion to polyamorous relationships.
It's interesting that you said fluorite because, like, that's a really obvious one, but then like we never see fluorite unfused. Yeah, I
think I Googled fluorite and I saw like an image, but I feel like it's like a 2-second image, right? Like that you see them unfused for like, but yeah, we see the depiction of the relationship.
Right.
But in its own Steven Universe-y fashion. Yeah. Okay, Delaney, wrapping up here, any overall thoughts on, it could be from the last type of things we discussed, or what are what's on your mind in terms of what you're taking away from our discussion here?
I'm definitely still, I think, a real sucker for best friends to couple, but like all of these, like there were ships that I like in every single one of these archetypes. So like, it's kind of like Beatrice copping out every time, being like it depends, but like it does, and I think it's just fun to do archetypes. Like, there's been a kind of a resurgence on Twitter of being like, oh, my favorite archetypes. And some of them are just stupid. Like, they're just joke ones. But, like, I think they're really fun. And me and my wife, like, send them to each other. And I just, like, it's just fun.
Yeah, there's a lot of, you'll hear a lot about, like, maybe, like, opposites attract characterizations, like the dumb one and the smart one, or, like, the, like, stuff like that. Like, those are all, like, kind of archetypes, too.
Yeah.
And we went 2 hours here. We could go even longer with
shipping forever. Shipping,
right? Yeah. So, this was the short version. Beatrice, what are your end thoughts here?
Our matey, God. Everything that was said has been said, and I agree with it. And it's fun. I think I just guys, shipping's fun. For the moment it's not, step away, take a walk, and then go back to having fun.
Yes. Yeah. Good advice.
Yeah, always don't take
Sometimes
too seriously.
It takes 10 years. Like, I'm finally chill about Zutara, but like,
yeah, we've went out of the Avatar shipping wars, but I was happy with how much there was to talk about all this. I mean, I'm someone who always wants to talk about shipping when we're talking about any show.
It's the most important thing ever.
I feel very validated that there's so much to talk about all the shipping stuff here. Honestly, it's just so interesting, and a lot of it, I do think a takeaway is like a lot of this is things we most frequently only see in fanon that fans are shipping. We're starting to see more of that in actual shows with more enemies type relationships. I think bringing in more things that creators grow up writing fanfics about, bringing that into your show. You don't have to do traditional relationships. I think that is only enriches the types of relationships that we see depicted in media.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see even more of this as the internet age continues, and we see people making shows that grew up on the internet, and hoping to see even more variety of relationships moving forward.
Yeah, to all the artists. Oh, sorry, Delaney.
Well, I just want to say it's important too that like these are like representing relationships is like, as much as we like you shipping's fun and stuff, this stuff is really important, like growing up and stuff, because this is really like. You don't I mean, at least for me, like this stuff's really like impactful, and it like you don't know anything else. Like, when you grow up, you your parents, and you might know another family couple or something, but like all you get is from the internet and TV. So like this kind of stuff is important, like showing different kinds of relationships, showing healthy relationships, and even showing like not healthy relationships, so you know what not to do or what to avoid.
And presenting it as that.
Yeah, it's really and presenting it, like not just having it, like presenting it as such.
Yeah.
But like no, this stuff's really important, and because I was completely unprepared to be in a relationship. And I think a lot of people are that way just because, like, especially as a queer woman, because, like, there wasn't.
You just don't see it.
There weren't any gays on TV when I was growing up. Like,
and if they were on shows that were like rated M for mature.
Yeah, or they were dudes, like, which is fine. Like, we need more gay dudes, but like, they didn't help me any. But like,
Yeah, I think we talk a lot on this podcast and in general about the importance of representation on people growing up, and that's obviously incredibly true. And I think it was really interesting to think about in terms of the portrayal of relationships, because
Definitely.
like Delaney said, that's something you just don't experience as a kid among you or your peers when you're young enough. So it's like something you can only look to media really to see. So it's maybe even the most important for relationships in terms of how they're depicted. And so if you only see the most heteronormative of boy meets girl type couples, then that's what you think of romance as. But now kids growing up are going to see a wider variety of romance, not just across like sexuality and gender, but even in terms of how people meet and what types of people can be together. And that's going to really broaden their view of like what is possible from relationships, what is a healthy relationship, what they might want to seek out. I think that's really interesting in terms of seeing the effect it has on children, as we're talking about a lot of children's shows here.
Yeah, and to all the artists and writers and people out there who are like seething in rage because your ship isn't canon or something, start creating and telling those stories and make them canon. Make your own characters canon. You have that power.
Yeah, they do it, and soon in 10 years we'll see every show be a Hurt Comfort show.
I'm fine with
so
that.
that's what...
and I would appreciate some of the credit for pushing you in the right direction, and I would like some royalties, please. Thank you.
Some royalties.
I'm a pirate. I'm always looking for that.
Some doubloons?
Doubloons?
Okay. Yeah, pirates don't do royalties. They subvert the royalties because you torrent it.
Is this not even going to be like? Is this even going to be the title of the podcast?
I am the one pirate who's all for supporting artists.
I hate you.
Okay, there you go. The good pirate. Yeah,
I'm the good pirate. Arg.
Okay, thanks for listening to our discussion on ships and pirates. And again, find everything about us at overlyanimated.com. You can support us via Patreon at patreon.com/overlyanimated. Thanks to our current patrons, especially our patron of the podcast, Reshipu. And thanks as always to our patron executive producers, Ryan, Steve, Beatrice, Hugh, Michael, Needle, and Phoenician. I thought this was a great discussion. Interested to hear what you guys think about it. So please leave comments on YouTube or our website or anywhere else you interact with us on what you thought of any. I also thought of any other examples for the relationships. What other archetypes do you think that are super prominent in animation? I think there's a lot of really interesting things to discuss from this. Yes.
Can I ask one last question? Really short. How do pirates know that they're pirates? They think before they are.
Oh.
Okay, I'm done.
You definitely have more pirate jokes there, but
I do.
Yeah, the movie rated R. Yeah, that's a classic. Okay. So we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. As of now, nothing confirmed yet. As of now, our next podcast might be on the latest Studio Ghibli film, Earwig and the Witch. So hopefully, but we'll see in 2 weeks, no matter what, for what we're talking about. Thanks, guys, for listening. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.